quiet. You ready? Okay. Oh, now screen went away. You did something and the screen went away again.
No, it's there now. This is big puffy coat.
Okay, good evening. I want to call the meeting to order. Welcome to the Tuesday, January 27th meeting of the City Council at 7:30. Calling the meeting to order. Madam Clerk, can we start with roll call, please?
Mr. Agan? Ms. Connolly?
Here.
Ms. Downs?
Here.
Ms. Flynn?
Here.
Mr. Snyder?
Here.
And Mayor Hardy?
Here.
And I believe Ms. Underhill will be participating remotely. Let me see if she is online. I think I see her there, yes.
I am here.
Motion for Ms. Underhill.
Yes. I'd like to move that for electronic participation by Councilmember Justine Underhill. Councilmember Underhill, could you please identify your remote location and reason for participation by electronic means?
Sure. Falls Church, Virginia, and personal reasons.
I move the City Council approve electronic participation by Councilmember Underhill in this meeting for personal reasons pursuant to the City Council's adopted policy.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's Connolly in the second. Call roll, please.
Mr. Agan?
Yes.
Ms. Connolly?
Yes.
Ms. Downs?
Yes.
Ms. Flynn?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
And Mayor Hardy?
Yes.
Thank you, Council.
Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. If I could ask you all to rise and join us.
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So before we actually begin tonight, I wanted actually to pause for a moment of silence. I wanted to pause to honor Alex Preddy and Renee Good, and actually we're learning there are others in federal custody who have actually died as well. Those deaths in Minnesota should trouble every single one of us. This was not only a tragic loss of life, it's a warning sign for all of us. These were lives lost under circumstances that raise serious questions about the use of power and the steady erosion of civil liberties that are supposed to protect all of us. So what happened in Minnesota should concern every community, even thousands of miles away here in Falls Church, because when basic rights are weakened anywhere, they are weakened everywhere. So here in Falls Church, I wanted to reaffirm that we value dignity and the rights of every individual. We believe in accountability in law enforcement, in transparent investigations, and in policing that protects without fear or intimidation. That's why I want to be clear that the kinds of federal enforcement we are seeing that have led to those deaths and the lack of credible independent review that follows is not something we welcome in this community. So tonight, I think Falls Church stands in solidarity with Minnesota, with the families who are grieving, and with all who are calling for accountability and justice. So I wanted to ask us to all join in a moment of silence to honor Alex and Renee and hold their families and communities in our hearts. Thank you all.
Madam Mayor, if I might just follow up. Today we've recognized the sacrifice of martyrs in silence, but the actions of this administration and the ways that those actions are carried out speak more loudly as an indictment of this administration than anything I could say or any criticism that I could level. Needless to say, these actions are entirely inconsistent with the values that I was brought up with, the values that I have made every effort to carry out in government, and I'm sure many others share that. It is indeed ironic that we're celebrating the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence with words which we all know and grew up with. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Those words speak more loudly than anything I can say tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Snyder. Are there others? Mr. Agan?
Yes, I'd like to make sure it's very clear that we support our state and local law enforcement. I think there are great organizations, and what we are seeing currently in Minnesota does not reflect them. I think we're seeing organizations that have become drunk with power, and the behavior of those organizations, this brown shirt behavior that we have seen and we saw 100 years ago elsewhere, is not acceptable and has no place in this country. And we need to stand up to them, and it is not okay. But I want to make it very clear, this is not a broad blanket indictment of all law enforcement, and that I am fully behind our local and state law enforcement here and believe in them. And I believe that we have good people in those organizations. It is one organization, one group, one administration that is just completely out of control here with behavior that is outrageous.
Thank you. Any others? Okay. Thank you all for joining us for that. Let's move on to our agenda. Is there a motion to adopt tonight's meeting agenda?
I move to adopt the meeting agenda.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Meeting agenda is adopted. We also have a proclamation tonight.
Ms. Hardy, can I do the 5A conflict of interest declaration?
Oh, okay. If you have it ready, sure.
City Council is discussing tonight an amendment to the city's adopted FY20.
Your mic is off.
City Council is discussing tonight an amendment to the city's adopted FY26 budget and a corresponding appropriation of funds to implement that amendment. I am an employee of the Falls Church City School Board, which will be affected by the proposed budget amendment. As a result, I'm in a group of 3 or more people who may realize a reasonably foreseeable direct or indirect benefit from the proposed ordinance. After consideration, I am electing to participate in this transaction because I'm confident in my ability to participate fairly, objectively, and in the public interest.
Thank you. And that is for the budget amendment item that we have later on in our business on our agenda. Thank you, Ms. Connolly. So tonight we also have a proclamation for February 2026 as Black History Month in the City of Falls Church. Ms. Connolly will do the honors.
Whereas the City of Falls Church wishes to honor and celebrate the impact Black Americans have made on the city and the nation. And whereas observance of Black History Month allows the community to reflect on the contributions and sacrifices made by generations of Black Americans. And the precursor of Black History Month was created in 1926 by Black historian and educator Carter G. Woodson. In 1915, the first rural branch of the NAACP was established in order to resist a housing segregation ordinance adopted by the Falls Church Town Council, and the brave work by Black community leaders in fighting racial injustice is honored on what is now the Tinner Hill Historic Site. And the Tinner Hill Heritage Foundation was founded in 1997 to preserve the early civil rights history of Falls Church, to honor local civil rights heroes and further the ideals for which they stood through community discussions, education, and celebrations of Black history, not just in February, but year-round. And the Tinner Hill Heritage Foundation's 9th annual March for Unity, Racial Healing, and Justice was held in the City of Falls Church on Martin Luther King Jr. Day, January 19th, 2026. And the Mary Riley Stiles Public Library is celebrating Black History Month with wonderful programs and displays featuring Black stories, and in the local history room, where oral histories, digital archives, written records, photographs, and more can be explored. And this year's Black History Month theme, A Century of Black History Commemorations, celebrates 100 years of commemorations since the establishment of the week-long observance that would become Black History Month. And the City of Falls Church will continue discovering, uplifting, and honoring Black history year-round by acknowledging and appreciating the contributions of Black Americans within the community.
Now therefore, I, Letty Hardy, Mayor of the City of Falls Church, Virginia, do hereby proclaim February 2026 as Black History Month in the City of Falls Church and call all of our residents to observe this month with programs, ceremonies, and activities. And it looks like we have members of the Tinner Hill Heritage Foundation here to accept the proclamation, so we'd welcome you to join us. Thank you for trekking out in the cold and treacherous conditions. Would y'all like to speak first?
Well, I have a community comment statement that I want to talk about Tinner Hill's plans for Black History Month. So if we could, let's take care of the proclamation first and then I speak.
Sure.
Okay.
Come on up.
Thank you, Veronica.
Would you like to help?
You want to hold it? We'll squeeze in here so we're centered. Thanks.
Thank you all.
Okay. I want to thank the city for their continued support of Tinner Hill and Black History Month, as well as the march, the annual march, which is conducted on the Martin Luther King holiday. And actually, it was the 10th annual, not the 9th, because you have the first on the first day, and then it's the second year is the next year is the second. So we started it in 2017. So 26 would have been number 10. I want to share with the community and the members of the City Council Tinner Hill's plans for Black History Month. We are planning a symposium and workshop, Voices of Resilience, Embracing Black History and the Arts from Insight to Action. Will take place on Saturday, February 21st, between 1 and 3. Hopefully it'll be warmer by then. The program highlights are moderated conversation with distinguished panelists, small group discussion, musical performance and poetry recital, and tour of the Marion Costner Selby exhibit. So it'll be taking place at the Peace Garden, or inside of the Peace Garden, on the 5th floor of Meridian High School, 121 Mustang Alley, Falls Church. And the panelists that we've invited are Dwandlin Reese, PhD. She is from the Smithsonian. Dr. Spencer Crew of George Mason University. Audrey Davis, who's over African American History Division in Alexandria. And Irene Chambers, Board of Directors, Tinner Hill Heritage Foundation. It'll be moderated by Inga A. Watkins, JD, a member of our Social Justice Committee, an initiative of the Tinner Hill Heritage Foundation. And so, thank you. Everyone is invited. The public is invited. So we hope to see you there, and thank you.
Thank you. And a belated thank you for all the work in the Martin Luther King March. That was really meaningful to celebrate as a community.
Been there, but I was recovering from the flu, and
You were there with us in spirit, so thank you. Okay. Madam Clerk, do we have any oaths of office to administer to new board and commission members?
I am not aware of anybody here for an oath of office tonight. Is anyone here for an oath? Doesn't look like it.
Okay. Great. Well, let's move on to the next agenda item, receipt of public comment. Can we start with the summary of written comments, please?
Yes, just one moment, please. Sean Dakin submitted a link to a budget tool used by Paris, France. The Falls Church 250 Committee submitted a memo reviewing funds and plans for programs and initiatives celebrating the 250th anniversary of the United States. Leslie Spitz Edison wrote with concerns regarding sidewalk access and safety for pedestrians during construction projects on Park Avenue. John Ward, board member of the Falls Church Climate Action Network, provided comments regarding the installation of solar panels as part of the roof refurbishment at Maryland Henderson Middle School. And Michael Trauberman, chair of the Environmental Sustainability Council, submitted a memo in support of including green building key initiative in the council's 2026 strategic priorities.
Great, thank you. Let's move on to receipt of public comment, either in person or virtually.
I don't think we have anybody signed up virtually, so we have a group here in person, and so it's generally 3 minutes to speak, and Mr. Gresko, who's going first, is speaking on behalf of a group, so he'll have 5 minutes, and I'll get the timer set up.
I'm Gene Gresko, and I live on North Fairfax Street. Today, I'm the spokesperson for the petition titled Save Single Family Zoning in Falls Church City. This petition has been electronically signed by 153 citizens, some of whom have braved the elements to be here tonight. Others are watching online. I've provided each council member a complete list of signers, as well as the petition, which reads as follows. The City of Falls Church has substantially increased its housing over the last 20 years, with 3,400 multi-units approved. That growth has increased traffic congestion and stressed city infrastructure. But the mixed-use developments have also added walkable grocery stores, restaurants, entertainment, while supporting the city's tax base and affordable housing programs. Overall, a quality of life benefit. However, the city also greatly benefits from stable, detached, single-family neighborhoods, R1A, R1B. These lots contain most of the city's environmental sustaining tree canopy, and their lawns control stormwater runoff. Their off-street parking spaces make for safer, less congested side streets for seniors, children, and school buses, and snowplows. And the ever-increasing house appraisals generate substantial taxes that support our schools and city services. But R1A, R1B zoning is under threat from proposals discussed by the City Council as documented in the following. Comprehensive Plan Chapter 10 recommendation to allow duplexes and quadplexes. Community Energy Action Plan advocates for multiple units per lot and the reduction of lot sizes. Affordable Living Policy recommends minimizing setbacks, reducing parking, and increased density. And the developer proposed conversion of 2 R1A lots on South Lee Street to townhouses. Given these threats to single-family neighborhoods, we demand that the Falls Church City Council maintain all existing regulations for R1A, R1B zoning, including the maximum allowed 1 primary plus 1 accessory dwelling per lot, and prohibit any conversion of existing R1A, R1B lots to alternate zoning. We are open to more housing expansion within the Broad and Washington Streets commercial zones, if it incorporates community input, fiscally sound infrastructure, and a balanced quality of life for all residents. That balance includes preserving the single-family neighborhoods we love. This petition is important for the upcoming City Council retreat. It is assumed the retreat will create a work item to update the comprehensive plan's land use chapter. If that work item is created, it should stipulate no changes to single-family zoning. Making that prohibition upfront will clearly prioritize the demands of local tax-paying citizens. That's as opposed to incorporating the interests of outside groups and developers who don't care about our neighborhoods. We also request that the retreat be video recorded, as many citizens wish to watch the proceedings. Thank you for reviewing this petition, paying special attention to petitioners' optional comments. Thank you.
Next, we have Ted Lin.
Hi, I'm Ted Ling. I've lived in Falls Church for many years. It was very heartening to hear the moment of silence and the expression of solidarity for the victims of federal agents in Minneapolis. You may recall a couple of weeks ago I was here. I talked about that issue. Since that time, I thought it was worth coming back because there's been 3 developments. One was alluded to earlier, the murder of another civilian by ICE. Second was Governor Spanberger rescinded State Executive Order 47. This executive order mandated that state law enforcement cooperate with ICE and recommended that local law enforcement cooperate with ICE. Finally, the recently announced partial withdrawal from Minneapolis of Border Patrol, I think, shows determined resistance to the Trump regime can yield results. So Falls Church needs to join that resistance. So while it's heartening to hear the expression of solidarity, I think we can make this declaration of sentiment more concrete and meaningful by modifying the general order to bar all cooperation between local law enforcement and federal agents, as I spoke 2 weeks ago. In addition, to make explicit that it is the policy of the city to intervene, investigate, and arrest federal agents that commit unlawful violence and abductions within the city. This was announced by the city of Minneapolis. I saw it in the press today. Maybe it was announced yesterday. With that, last time I was here, there was a little bit of discussion between the manager and members of the council about consulting the city attorney and reviewing the general orders. If it's possible to get an update, that would be wonderful. And then I have another, do I have time? How much? 1 minute, okay. Totally different issue. Park Towers near my house, rather than shoveling, they spread a great deal of blue de-icing material. De-icing material is fine. I use it sometimes. However, to do it in lieu of shoveling in such great amounts is really not good for pets and wildlife. It is, in fact, on the city website that you should shovel and then use sparing amounts of de-icing material. So I bring this to your attention. I'm not quite sure what follow-through is required or appropriate, but it bothers me and it bothers my dog. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Huxley.
We just want to make sure we can hear you.
So, I'm Huxley Anderson, and I'm here to talk about the road safety of Falls Church City. Me and some other kids collected notes and data on West Annandale Road, how much cars ran and how much cars stopped. 50 cars didn't even try to stop out of 220. And one of them ran the stop sign and then did a U-turn in the middle of the intersection. And then the number of cars that completely stop was 70 out of 220. That was all in 20 minutes in Wednesday afternoon. And all of the rest did rolling stops. I would like a lot of speed bumps there. They have speed bumps at roads that have 500 cars go through today. There's 6,000 cars going through West Annandale Road a day. We need speed bumps there. When kids are going to school, they can get run over. I'm getting very concerned about the safety measurements took when kids are going to school. I think that we need a lot more road safety. It's not just West Annandale Road. If you go down Gundry, it's the whole way to Oak Street. It's like everything. Nothing is safe. You're getting more and more in danger. Your percentage of getting hit by a car are getting higher and higher. I would like to suggest lots of speed bumps, some raised crosswalks, and some cameras to see how much cars run the stop sign a day. Thank you.
Thank you, Huxley. Good job on all that data collection, too.
Next, we have John Ward.
Like the data collection. Good evening, I'm John Ward, 335 Riley Street, and my comments tonight are on behalf of the board of the Falls Church Climate Action Network. These are very similar to those that were delivered to the school board in November, and they expand the recommendations we included in our November letter to the City Council related to the Capital Improvements Program, the CIP. I'm here to recommend two actions by City Council, and they are related to each other. You will soon be setting the budget for FY 2027. The Capital Improvements Program calls for refurbishing the roof surface at the middle school by FY 2029 with an estimate of almost $1 million. Putting solar on school and government buildings is also part of the Government Operations Energy Action Plan. The CIP also says that the city and the schools will consider approaches for installing solar panels on the middle school roof after it's been refurbished. But about 7 months ago, tax laws changed, and now the 30% federal rebate for solar panels expires in less than 2 years, December 2027. It seems to us that acting soon to take advantage of the 30% federal rebate will easily justify refurbishing the roof a year or two early. So contracting for solar on government and school roofs is now an FY 2027 budget decision. Now, the school board and the city council can keep those as two separate decisions. Yes, we're definitely going to draw down $1 million from capital reserves for the roof, and then separately we'll decide how to finance investments in solar. However, there are ways to integrate the roof refurbishment with solar panels so that some or all of the roof refurbishment costs may also qualify for the 30% federal rebate. So if that's $1 million for the roof, that's up to an extra $300,000 cost reduction. The catch, as I've said, is that all this work has to be completed by December 2027, which is only halfway through FY 28, so it's really an FY 2027 decision. With these integrated approaches, the required capital reserves could range from as little as 0 up to 1.7 million, depending on how it's financed, whether it's purchased directly or through a third-party power purchase agreement, as was done for the high school. So our two recommendations to the city council and city staff are, first, Discuss with the school board the benefits of accelerating the work at the middle school and the availability of capital reserves in 2027, if needed. And second, in parallel, direct staff to work with the school facilities staff to assess these integrated approaches and present you and the school board with options and plenty of time to make decisions for the 27 budget. These integrated roof and school approaches have worked at other schools in Virginia, but the devil's in the details when assessing the costs for FCCPS roofs. Finally, although we're commenting tonight about MEH, the expiration of the 30% credit applies to other city solar investments. We're glad you're considering funding for solar on Aurora House, and we believe solar on the community center could be roughly twice as cost effective, assuming its roof is still in good shape. Thank you for your time tonight.
Next, we have Grace Godelis.
Good evening. Good evening. Wait. Good evening. My name is Grace. Thank you everybody for coming today and letting me speak. I live in Winter Hill and I cross West Annandale to Gundry and Gundry to James Street every day to go to school, and I feel unsafe. Many people have almost been hit, including my dad and my dog. My dad was walking my dog and it was dark and they started crossing Gundry to James Street and the car stopped, but as soon as they got to the middle of the crosswalk, the car started to drive. My dog had to jump under the car and my dad just ran, and none of them got hurt, but they could have. And we're lucky that not many people have been hurt, but this could happen many times, and there's been a lot of close calls. So we need more speed bumps, and I need everybody to think about this, why we can't have speed bumps. Thank you.
Next, we have Ellie Singer.
Hi, my name is Ellie Singer. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to come here tonight. We have a problem in my neighborhood that my friends and I feel we need to solve. Our problem is that I don't feel safe crossing the streets of Winter Hill. Why, you ask? The answer is simple. The cars don't stop at the stop signs. Why, we don't know. I think it has to do with us living near Broad Street, aka the busy street in the little city. Now that I'm going to tell you something that I'm not sure is bad. Out of 120 cars, 70 stopped. And I don't think that's good. Thank you.
And the last speaker slip I have is Mary Lou Paquel.
Good evening, Council. Forgive me if I'm not making a lot of sense tonight. I slipped on the ice outside and cracked my head when I went down, so it's kind of hard to get here, but I'm trying to keep my thoughts together, okay? And I wanted to come out and support the people that came out tonight. So I came to advocate for low-density zoning throughout the city. I came to advocate for the preservation of single-family housing. Please don't increase the density allowed. We've had more than enough high-density development for a long time. For Virginia Square, we would like a community charrette on how to approach land use decisions there before any decisions are made with developers. Let the community give input on how to use that land. We could sure use some more green space in the city. We need less traffic congestion. We need safer neighborhood streets. We need to maintain our quality of life here. And I will add my own story to this dangerous streets in Winter Hill. Halloween night, I had to run into the middle of the street and literally use my body to say, stop, stop, stop. You're about to run over some trick-or-treaters here in Winter Hill. The person was oblivious and they were going very fast, and it was an obvious night, and I was like, I don't know if I made the right decision because she wasn't slowing down and there I was, right? But I wasn't going to let a kid get run over. And when you continue down Gundry and you take a left onto Virginia, that crosswalk My son is learning to ride a bicycle. So, do you know, I went every morning he went and stayed in my car. And I was like, I am watching you, mister. You need to walk your bike across that crosswalk, you know? And every time, until it got to be a habit, because that is a dangerous crosswalk. People are bombing down from Broad, down Virginia to get to wherever they're going. So I would support, I think Huxley said, speed bumps and other traffic calming measures. We just don't want a child to get hit when we know it's a problem. And I would say lowering density would help with all these things and improve quality of life. Thank you very much for listening. Take care.
Thank you. Is that it for public comment? Thank you. And just so the audience is aware, we do allow remote testimony for public comment virtually. So if you ever feel like the conditions outside are too cold, or you don't feel like venturing out, or you don't feel like you need to get a babysitter, we want you to be able to participate in our city council meetings. And so you can always participate electronically. You don't have to show up in person. Your video will come through on the screen for us. So Ms. Pickle, thank you for coming out. Hopefully, if you want medical attention, we want to make sure you don't have a concussion or anything from that fall. So everyone be well. I'm guessing we will have a number of questions for the city managers. For those of you who came out and asked about Annandale and Gundry or Virginia Village, we're actually going to talk about that in the city manager's report. So I'd encourage you to stay tuned and stick around. Yeah. Or you can watch from home too. Maybe by the time you get home, we'll get to that part of it. So let's move on to the Planning Commission annual report, and then we can get to the city manager's report, because that's what's next.
I believe they've requested to reschedule to possibly February 23rd. They weren't available to come tonight, so.
Oh, okay. So we will move on to the city manager's report then.
Well, thank you, Mayor Hardy, members of council, members of the community. I was planning to speak to two things tonight. One, to provide an update on the snow response, and two, to provide a briefing on Virginia Village, and some updates on things that the staff has learned as we're considering a roadmap for the future of that area. And I'll respond to any questions then after those reporting on those two things. So first, on the snow report, as everyone is aware, we've been in a state of emergency since 5 o'clock on Saturday. And since that time, city staff have been working around the clock, 24 hours a day, to help us respond to and ultimately recover from a very large weather event. Essentially, this is a very unique snow event in terms of the duration of it and the volume of it and the consistency of it. I think everybody who's been out shoveling understands it's a very heavy and frozen snow, and it's been very difficult to deal with. City staff have been basically here at the city the whole time. Our public safety staff, our rec and parks staff, who do most of the handwork for sidewalk clearing at city facilities, and our DPW operations team. They've been working in shifts, and when they rest, they've been staying in local hotels so that then they can come back after a short rest and get back to work. Tonight is the first night that staff have gone back to their homes for the night since the event started. And these are small teams. Our Rec and Parks team is 5 people. And then after that is currently 3 people who are in active response. And our DPW operations has been about 14 individuals being able to operate the plows in shifts over the course of the storm. At this point in the city, most of our streets have been plowed, and we do have still some of our smaller cul-de-sacs and some of our smaller townhouse developments where they have public roads which still need attention. And for those who are waiting for that, appreciate the patience, and we're working very hard to get to those final streets. In those smaller streets, we have to go in first with an ice breaker, a real heavy piece of equipment, and then follow up with a plow behind that. And in addition, in the tight spaces, we generally are having to pick up the snow and move it to a location where it can be deposited. And so that work on the smaller streets is slower than any of the work that we're doing on other streets. With respect to city sidewalks, first, just a big thank you to community members who've worked very hard to clear their sidewalks. It's really just been amazing to see the work that has gone into that. And for such a big event, I think our community has really stepped up in that regard so that people can walk around the city safely. And we've been trying to celebrate examples of that through our social media posts. And we also do recognize that many of us experience the fact we do that work to shovel it, and then the plow comes along and the furrow gets moved sometimes into the sidewalk or to cover up the area where you cleared up your car. And that's very frustrating. And we empathize with people. That happened to me personally. And so we know what that feels like. And we also know that our plow operators, they're trying to cover a lot of ground. And when you have this volume of snow, sometimes there's just no good place to put it. And that is the unfortunate result. It's something we certainly don't try to do, but we do recognize that it does happen. Because of that, we are not currently actively enforcing the city rule of clearing sidewalks within 24 hours after the snow stops. What we are doing is celebrating the great work where community members have been very successful in opening their sidewalks up. But the reason we're not enforcing it is partly a staff resources issue. In big events like this, we have a higher than normal call volume for our public safety staff, and our DPW staff are also dealing with a lot of phone calls from residents with concerns about plowing and wanting information about that. So we simply have not had the personnel to go out and knock on doors, which we traditionally have done for the business community in particular, a focus on our business corridors to let people be aware that the city code does call for property owners to clear their sidewalks. As we consider next phases, some of our priority work will be working with the schools to help them reopen. And we know that, for instance, those at Oak Street School are trying to walk to that school. There's, in some places, big mountains of snow between the street and the sidewalk. So we'll be working with school staff to triage that and see where we can open those areas up and make it so that the buses can pass on their routes. There's also a concern about the bus stops and the space in the road for a safe loading and unloading of school buses. We'll be working with the schools on if there's a practical way to provide some additional space in those areas. Mount Daniel School itself has been a big challenge for us. The snow is of this strange consistency where even though it's had a lot of attention, it is not down to bare pavement. And so making sure that buses can safely get to Mount Daniel is something that I know the school staff are concerned about and we're working on. So those are a couple of the highlights of work that we think will be happening tomorrow. And then going past that, we'll also be working in our business community where we have some of the big mountains of snow that are blocking sidewalks and trying to get heavy equipment in a manageable way to move that snow and get those business corridor sidewalks opened up. Those will be sort of two priorities that we'll be working on in the coming days. At the next City Council meeting, we'll be asking for City Council to take a formal action to ratify the state of emergency. And we'll have a fuller briefing on kind of what we did during this event. And with every big event, we also learn from it, and we try to carry forward those, what we learn and apply it to the next big event. And we'll share some of that at the next City Council meeting. Those are some highlights on the storm response. I'll shift now, unless the council wants to have a discussion about that, but my next thing to discuss was the Virginia Village update.
Yeah, Mr. Shields, maybe we'll pause there because I'm sure we will have some questions or feedback. And then I also would like to get to maybe responses to our young public commenters on Annandale and Gundry. They may not want to stick around and listen to Virginia Village, and we can get some other things first. So first, snow response. So thank you to Public Works. I know that I've seen the crews out at all hours of night, so I know the shift's been very long, and it's been an unusually hard storm to respond to. So we appreciate all the hard work and the community's work as well. So thank you for the update on that. Questions or comments from council related to snow? Ms. Connolly? I'm just going to go down the line because I'm sure we all have something to say.
I will echo Ms. Hardy's appreciation for Public Works, also for your communications and the explanation of the 3 phases of where we are. I think that's been really helpful to the public. I think maybe in the future we need to try to figure out a way that people aren't having to answer as many phone calls and field as many requests. I think this probably helped, but there's so much unknown, and I just feel bad that so many Public Works staff and emergency staff have been having to field phone calls when there are other ways to get that information. But I do appreciate how, the quick response that these trucks have been out in a train of 3 trying to clear everything, and the mountains of snow are the next big project. But thank you very much.
Mr. Snyder, anything?
Thank you, and thanks to all the employees for their hard work. I do think we need to address the mountains at intersections that preventing people from effectively walking across the street. I know a lot of the intersections I've seen, simply there's no way. Even when the walks are shoveled, there's no way to cross the street. So I don't know exactly how we address that, but hopefully that's in the priority list.
Ms. Downs?
Thank you. I think as we've all talked about, thank you to you and your team. This has been a very wonky sort of storm, right, with this sleet that came in after the snow, and my family and I were out there, and so I think we all know, but we literally had to get basically like an old metal shovel to try to crack that to get it off. I mean, it's very, very cumbersome and very, very difficult. So I really feel for you all, and I just want to thank, I know Ms. Connolly echoes my thanks here, but with the schools, it's a heavy lift for them, literally. So thank you for all the support you're going to provide to them to try to get open the next couple days.
I'll just also express my thanks. I know that I emailed the city manager directly, but we often have sort of a front row seat to what it is that's happening at the community center and sort of the cleanup that's happening throughout the storm with the snow blowers and the plows and this time backhoes and everything else that we're out there to keep the police drive aisle open and the community center sidewalks, and seeing staff coming and going because of the warming center. And so really appreciated all of those efforts given the sand-like quality of the snow this time around. And I agree with Ms. Connolly that kind of going into future storms, it's just helpful for the community to understand sort of what the tiered response is so that they have kind of clearer expectations about when it is that they may see DPW staff based on sort of the conditions of the city overall and the time that's being spent on emergency, and primary routes before we can get to sort of secondary and residential streets just because of the nature of the conditions.
I also want to echo what everybody else has said and the thanks to DPW, but I also want to call out the public safety and the police who were out there during the storm. For those of you who don't know, there was a traffic accident on Lincoln in the middle of the storm. There's a little story there, but definitely should not have been out driving. But the police were out there, they were taking care of it. Even the Falls Church Volunteer Fire Department came out in their ambulance. So I want to express my appreciation to all of those who were out there and helping to deal with this storm. There are 2 areas I think we need to, or a couple areas we need to take a look at. One is the intersections. I have a wonderful picture of the crosswalk on Broad, completely blocked, and people standing there looking to cross at Maple. And it's like, how do you do it? The other one is coming in afterwards, after we're through the crush, we know where some of the repeat offenders are, or where there were things, and just let them know that what they did during it was not the right thing. There's especially with the sidewalks in residential areas, there's a peer effect. It's usually you have a whole string of houses that are doing a great job shoveling, and then you have a string of houses that do not. And if we can even convince one of those houses in the string that does not, the next time to be more proactive, we'll have a knock-on effect that would really help. We don't have to do enforcement. We don't have to fine them. We just need to remind them, I think, after this. And then some of the businesses as well, they're doing what's in their interest. There's one particular I saw where wonderful job to their front door, wonderful job on half the sidewalk so that people could get to their front door. The other half of the sidewalk was completely untouched. So following up with those things in a week, I think, would be beneficial after everybody's had some rest and relaxed and froze again.
And I think that's, I'm sure all of us who lived here, I can't remember having a storm and having it be then a week to 10 days below freezing. That's the other thing. I think when we've had these storms, generally in a couple days, warms up, starts to melt. So it's just making it even more difficult.
Also, it's weird that because normally you go out during a heavy snow and you clear it, and it makes it easier the next day, and that was the exact opposite this time.
So a few things to add. So I'm going to plus one, the supporting the schools to kind of reopen. I think we're at the point where we all would love our children to return to school soon. The business community, and I think those intersections that we talked about, climbing over those mounds of snow. I also would love for us to pay attention to fire hydrants and bus stops. We know that not everybody is walking or driving, and so the bus stops in particular are pretty treacherous where people have to rely on transit to get to work. Going forward, a suggestion I have is rather than people calling, emailing, texting, all of us individually, and then us funneling, it might make sense to think of some sort of web form where the concerns can be funneled to staff more cohesively and also more efficiently for all of us. So not something that we have to deal with all the time, so maybe not worth investment. But I know we've talked about getting public comment in a more centralized system, and this would be a really great example where that would help us not manage a billion different forms of communication. So something for us to think about. The public should be aware that there's a forecast for another round of storms coming this weekend. And so I know that staff is monitoring that very closely, and hopefully it won't come to pass, but want to make sure the public is aware that there could be a round 2 coming in about 4 days. Okay, anything else on snow response before we move on to Annandale and Gundry? While we've got our public commenters here, even though it's a snow day and you get to sleep in a little more tomorrow. Mr. Shields, do you have an update for us on that? I know that we've talked about it a number of times, and Annandale and Gundry in particular has gotten 2 rounds of neighborhood traffic calming.
It has. So thank you for the comments tonight, and they were very persuasive, and I think it's always good when you can bring data to address any public policy question. The intersection at Annandale and Gundry has been the subject of a lot of discussion through the years. And one of the things that, so there's been a total redesign of that intersection in the last 5 years. And then we have some new striping and additional measures to try to encourage people to recognize there's a stop sign and that they need to stop for it. In terms of the data also on stop signs, unfortunately, that rate of running stop signs is not unique to Annandale and Gundry. It is a problem across the city, and it's a problem kind of everywhere. And it's particularly a problem where you have 3-legged intersections and the stop sign is there. That stop sign was installed when it was put there at the request of neighbors to serve as a speed deterrent. And so that stop sign sort of functions that way, and those types of stop signs have very high levels of non-compliance. We see that in other stop signs across the city with similar characteristics. the CACT did hear public comment on this at their last meeting, and I'll be following up with staff on staff's recommendations right now. The simple request is a speed hump. We do, just as generally speaking, we do try to avoid speed humps as the sort of automatic go-to as our traffic calming device, and try to have other design options. And we've already had a number of design modifications at that intersection to try to address speeding as well as stop sign compliance. So we'll continue to assess it. We appreciate the comments. We do hear them. And I know the CACT and staff will get back with respect to the comments that were made at its last meeting and to the meeting that occurred tonight.
Thank you. Ms. Downs.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Shields. And I just wanted to point out, Huxley, I thought you did a great job, and you mentioned about having cameras at the stop signs to prevent people from rolling through the stop signs. And all of us up here would love to have what we would call more automated enforcement. But one of the things that happens is right now, Richmond, which is our state capital, they only let us do certain things. And so right now, they won't let us put up cameras at stop signs. So what we try to do every year, and I know Mr. Snyder has also been on top of this, we try to go, when we go down to Richmond to talk to our state legislature, we say, hey, give us the ability to put more cameras up, speed cameras and things like that. Right now, we only by law can put up a speed camera in a school zone. So there's one by St. James Elementary. But I think that's a great point, and just so you know, we're not able to do that by law, but we are trying to get that power. Okay, thank you.
Ms. Underhill.
Yeah, I just briefly wanted to say that I went out to the Annandale and Gundry intersection last week, and I looked around and saw, some of the issues that were happening. I would say the main two requests that I heard, one was, apparently we're waiting until May to do more data collection. Does it have to wait till May? So my first council request is, can we do data collection earlier than May and not have to wait so long? And then the second request is, are there solutions like centerline hardening or even temporary solutions like flexi posts that can be added right at the intersection, just to narrow things a bit. So the paint on the ground with the bike lanes is great, but unfortunately, without physical narrowing, it's still an incredibly wide street. And I know we've narrowed that street. I know there were design changes to make a little bit more of a bump out, but even I would almost say the 1960s design standards that we had, we've made a little bit better, but they haven't quite gone far enough in terms of narrowing. And so, especially with the rapid part of the rapid response team's work should be to be able to quickly respond to things and do things in a cheap and fast way. And so I'm wondering, can we add a few flexi posts at that intersection just to visually and physically narrow things a bit? And if there are issues, then guess what? Flexi posts should be easy to be removed. And so I'd be interested in exploring any sort of temporary measures that we can put in place quickly while we try to figure out something that's a more long-term solution. And I realize that this is not the only intersection that we have issues with, but I would like to at least see if we can address things in a quick and fast and cheap manner here, just to see if it works. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Connolly.
And I just want to thank Huxley and Ellie and Grace for coming out to speak tonight. You mentioned, Huxley, also you're just concerned about walking all the way through Winter Hill, and Ms. Pickell also said the same thing about crossing there at Virginia and Gundry, that it's sometimes dangerous there. And I drive up there almost every day, and I have experienced that in a car, how tight it feels and how, as I'm driving, I'm being really careful to make sure that there aren't people and kids that are on the road. And I know other people aren't as careful. So I think that's another thing we also need to really take a look at is through that whole neighborhood, it's really tight and sometimes it's hard to see people. So thank you for pointing that out as well.
Ms. Flynn?
I had just a different request, but this conversation had me thinking about the changes that were at the Little Falls, Great Falls intersection with the change from the stoplight to the four-way stop and the blinking red. I would say anecdotally, I feel like the speeds have actually decreased kind of coming in and through that intersection, and have heard from others who feel similarly. But I know that there are concerns about the blinking red potentially coming down. And I didn't know, is the plan that that traffic light is coming down and it's just going to be the four-way stop without the blinking red? Because I know that folks who have responded positively to the intersection have still had concerns about the visibility there if the light comes down.
Yeah, what precipitated a lot of this was that the poles and the wires, all that needed to be replaced. And so that's what caused us to think about moving to a four-way stop. So yes, that can will be removed ultimately. So we recognize that that light does, it's helpful. But it is coming down.
So I'd just like to plus one what Justine said about a quick solution. I know DPW does not like to put the pedestrian signs in the middle of the crosswalks because they say they'll get hit. I think this is a situation where let's just do it. If they get hit, they get hit. Maybe it damages somebody's car. Well, they should have been paying attention to it. I think we need to make these quick little solutions. So I'd like to plus one that. I will say that this was a situation where even when the restriping was proposed, the CACT, I think the primary comment back was this is a great solution for to look at speed, but it's not going to do anything for the stop sign. And I think it's very clear we don't have to wait till May to get data and find out that it didn't make a change. The other thing I would like to say in response to the public is that there is a bill in the General Assembly. I don't know the number. To provide photo enforcement. I have high hopes that it will be passed and we will have the ability to do that, especially at stop signs. And I would encourage every member of the public to please write and say to our representatives, pass that bill. I hope it'll be passed. In the past, I think it's been passed before, but then vetoed. And with the new governor, I'm hoping that will not be the case. So please write and support that bill.
Great. So on Annandale and Gundry, I guess a number of thoughts. Well, first of all, thank you, Huxley and Grace and Ellie, for coming out. Huxley, I frequently see you zooming down to Oak Street on your bike, and so that is one of my walking routes in the morning as well. I know you want to speak again. If you could just wait, because we generally try to let us finish the discussion up here. If you would like to come give public comment again, we welcome it since we know you guys made a special trip out. I know I heard lots of requests for speed bumps, and I know I've also heard concerns about stop sign running. I guess I would like to better understand what issue we're trying to solve. Is it one or the other or both? And if it is stop sign running, how do speed bumps actually help with that or not? And then also the timing of the Maple and Annandale roundabout. I know that with that project underway and hopefully done in maybe 6 months, that will throttle a lot of the volume and speeds through the intersection. And so I don't know how that might interact with a lot of the concerns we're hearing. But I do generally want to make sure that we get in the habit of when we have a solution that we're proposing, we monitor the efficacy of it. So just because we finished the project, I'd like to know, did it resolve the issues? And so the request I think Justine and others have had of, how quickly can we go out there and monitor whether the stop sign running or speed or both are improved or not? That should be just in our habit every time we do a traffic calming project. I think that's, an important exercise to make sure that solutions we think are going to work actually perform as expected out in the road. So that's kind of my first question. Second, knowing that all of our intersections have this challenge, I think I share the desire that we all want to be more nimble in deploying solutions out there. I know in 3 budget cycles ago, we kind of allocated this rapid response team. And so that would be nice to see, whether it's at this intersection or others, more rapid solutions that can be more responsive, knowing that they don't have to be the perfect solution, but the 80% solution might be good enough, especially knowing that engineering takes a lot more time and money. Is it Ellie? If you want to come up really quickly and just speak in response to what you're hearing, and then we will let you get on with bedtime and other fun things for the night.
For the solution for the area that we cross, I don't want police coming in, because one time me and my friend, we were about to do a normal routine and walk to school, and the police stopped one, and they stopped a car, and they stopped it right in front of where we had to exit, and then the police told us we couldn't exit to get to school. At the end, my mom just walked us there, but it was like, that's why I don't want it, because I don't want the police interfering, because it just doesn't, it does help with the cars. It makes them stop, but it just, it's hard to get it to school, and it's a big distraction, and I didn't really know what is happening, so it kind of scared me a bit why the police were there. Thank you.
Thank you. And there is a bill. It's HB 1330. It's in the General Assembly right now. This will be our final comment on this item. I think parents would also like to go home.
So, when you added speed cameras, that's not the main problem. Running stop signs is the main problem. Maybe we could get some raised crosswalks in there. Maybe we could start handing out running stop sign tickets or something like that. We need to do something about these roads. Otherwise, people are going to get killed, and we don't want that. Thank you.
Agreed. Thank you. Please keep up that conviction in all things you care about, guys. We're really proud of you.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, just one quick comment. Thanks for being here and collecting the data. And I think was just mentioned, it's very important to communicate with Delegate Simon and Senator Salim how strongly you support legislation to allow more electronic enforcement. Police can't be everywhere, and the inability to enforce both speed and stop signs is causing a lot of the issues that we have. So please follow up with that communication, and it is part of our legislative program to maximize electronic enforcement, and we'll be doing everything we can, but there's nothing that speaks more loudly than the way you've spoken tonight to us. So please carry that forward to the legislature. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I also wanted to follow up on the public comment we had about our federal immigration general orders. I know we still have our public commenter in the audience. Mr. Shields, can you speak to kind of the follow-ups that we've had since then?
So, I think if the council would like to have a deeper conversation on this, we could schedule a work session discussion on it. Generally our posture as a police department is geared around maintaining trust with the community. That sort of guides everything. And to do that in compliance with established federal and state law. The trust piece of the equation is just crucial. The police investigate criminal matters, and it's just absolutely, for the whole criminal justice system to work, the public has to feel confident in their police department so that they feel confident to be able to report crimes, to be witnesses in criminal proceedings. It's sort of the foundation of criminal justice in America. And I think our police department views that as the primary mandate. And so in terms of our posture with federal enforcement, federal does federal and local does local. And the laws are very clear about these relationships. There have been some pushes in the prior administration, I believe, personally, that tried to cloud that line by recommending that local police do things that traditionally they have not done, and under federal law they should not do, to be involved in the enforcement of federal laws or immigration laws. Under the law, if we are in the midst of a criminal investigation and it becomes known to the police that there's an immigration issue, there are statutes that govern that, and our police comply with those statutes. And that's generally what our posture is and will continue to be. We have posted on the city website both our general order and frequently asked questions. It sort of translates that general order into plain language. And the purpose of that FAQ is so that the public can see it and understand what the city police will do and what they won't do with respect to immigration status and with respect to working with any federal agency, including ICE. And so I do recommend people look at that FAQ. That's why it is there, to be able to sort of lay that out in ways that we hope are accessible. It is an important issue, and if the City Council would like to have a further conversation about it, we'd be happy to schedule a work session where we could go into it in more detail with our public safety professionals.
Great. Thank you for that explanation. Ms. Downs?
I would support having a more detailed conversation and work session. I mean, I'm hoping that we won't have to continue down this road, our country continuing down this road, but it helps us be more informed when we're talking with citizens. So I would definitely like to have this discussed in more detail in work session.
Okay. Mr. Snyder?
Yeah, I think the way you described it, city manager, is exactly the right approach. We are, at least traditionally had been, a government led by the rule of law, and it's very important that we uphold that at every instance. And so I think as long as that's our foundation, then come what may.
Okay. I know we also have the Virginia Village Roadmap discussions. Do we have other council requests before we get to that item? Because that one will be meatier. Ms. Connolly?
I just want to speak to the petition that came and tell people that thank you for bringing that prior to our retreat. This is the appropriate time to bring it and the appropriate time for those conversations to be had. So thank you for providing that.
Ms. Underhill?
Yeah, so I've been having discussions with people on Lincoln regarding the granting of Lincoln. And one of the requests I had recently that I just wanted to highlight again was some form of communication and updates to the neighborhood, whether it's connecting with a point person, that could be Andrew Olison, who does have a listserv already, or whether it's emailing the neighborhood listserv that's already in place directly by city staff. I was hoping that we would have some sort of even just a sentence or two of an update saying, here's what the delays are, or here's what the what we're working through. But I've had enough people asking me what's going on and just feeling confused about the project. So any sort of communication, I was hoping last week there would be some sort of communication. If not last week, then this week, if something could go out, even a sentence by the end of the week, that would go a long way in terms of helping address some of the concerns and issues that I've been hearing from neighbors regarding communication on the project.
And Councilmember Underhill, thank you for that comment. It was our goal to get an update out last week. We'll certainly get that done this week. I think we got a little bit interrupted by the storm. And then we'll try to go forward with just a regular cadence of updates for the community because we know people are very interested in it. And we're also going to be bringing a contract approval to the City Council for the Greening of Lincoln project soon. And the public will want to know kind of what that's about, and we'll have a communication about that.
Fantastic. And yeah, I guess to communicate to staff, it doesn't have to feel overwhelming to do the communication. Simply, even a couple sentences just as an update with what's going on would be enough, and I know would be deeply appreciated by the community.
Yeah, we've had, and just to second that, Ms. Underhill, basically every single City Council office hours, we have every single month someone comes to talk to us about greening of Lincoln. But one of the interesting things was, even if there's really no update, even just sending that out, saying, we don't really have an update, we're still working on it, just that. But I think it's this sort of silence that gets everyone nervous. Thank you.
Understood and agree.
Okay, any other council requests before we get to Virginia Village?
Yes.
Okay.
Going back to the trust in our law enforcement, during the tour, one of the concerns I had was that some members of our law enforcement are wearing all green uniforms, and I'm concerned if it's possible that they not do that. I think that would enhance the comfort level that citizens have with our law enforcement at this time, that they're in, less combative type of uniform. That is one request. And I know both the sheriff and the police have appropriate uniforms that are not like that. And then the other one is the other week or the other month, I forget exactly when, Amanda Brain came and talked about how she was wanting to get into a cadence of every month doing some sort of a small project or less impactful. The four-way at Lincoln, that Little Falls and Great Falls was one of those, was the first one. I'd like to find out what's next. What's on that list? We've talked about, elements of Park Avenue, Great Streets. There are pieces of that can be implemented. I think, Andrew's comment that he sent in for Bike Falls Church was talking about a four-way stop sign at the WNOD in Great Falls and adding that stop sign. That's obviously something that maybe could be on the list as well. So I would request that we get some insight into what are some of those possible things we're going to see. Obviously, we're not going to see one implemented right now because they're all exhausted and need a well-deserved rest right now. But at some point, I'd like to see some sort of a list.
Okay. Let's move on to Virginia Village then.
Okay, thank you, Council. I'll try to keep it fairly brief, but this is a meaty topic, and tonight will be really just an update. But for background, just for the public who might be tuning in, the city, acting through its Economic Development Authority, has been acquiring quadplexes in the Virginia Village community over the past 4 years. And there are 20 quadplexes in that community, and so far about 9 have been acquired. And so on November 17th, the staff presented a draft roadmap to engage with the community to consider policy about the future of that neighborhood that would be expressed in the city's small area plans, the comprehensive plan, and then ultimately in zoning. And so that would be kind of a key engagement with the community about what the future of Virginia Village can look like. And at the same time, or sort of a step behind that, the city also would be taking steps to solicit nonprofit partners where we could transfer the property to a partner and they would then potentially operate the quadplexes as affordable housing, and in the future, redevelop property in alignment with the vision that is set forward in the comp plan through that public engagement process. We laid out a roadmap that targeted having those two things happen with the goal of a comp plan amendments being considered over the summer and adopted in the fall, and a solicitation for a partner also issued it in the summer with a selection in the fall, and then ultimately entitling the property and entering into an agreement with a nonprofit partner in the spring of next year timeframe. One of the key milestones that we laid out in the roadmap is that financing for affordable housing, March is a very important time for putting applications together to put out for competitive grants for affordable housing financing. So that was one month that where everything would come together. And so at that work session, the council asked for some additional data about what our goals for affordable housing should be. And so the memo provides some numbers that relate to committed affordable units that we have in the city right now, those that are going to be coming off of their books because of expiring voluntary concessions and expiring ADU covenants. Many of them had 20-year timeframes, and so we're going to also lose some affordable housing. And so then what's the gap between what the affordable living policy says we should be trying to achieve for affordable housing and kind of where we'll be? So the memo touches on some of those numbers. And the memo also provides a summary of some input that we got from the nonprofit affordable housing world. And I want to speak to that in just a little bit more detail because our goal with that interaction was to be very transparent about it. We recognize that talking with developers, even nonprofit developers, ahead of community could cause some concerns about the community thinking that things are being pre-baked, before we do the community engagement. What we wanted to talk with the nonprofit developers about was just about the process that we've laid out there. Is it realistic? Are there things that we should be considering about that process? And we did learn some things, and I'll hit some of the highlights. But we did not talk about density or building heights or what the mix of uses should be, that type of thing. That would be through the community engagement first. And I'm sure the development community would be watching that community engagement process. And then ultimately, we do want to have our comp plan reflect things that are buildable. And so we'll want to have sort of a syncing up to make sure that the vision that we articulate with community is something that could be feasible in the future, whatever that vision might be through the engagement process. It is envisioned, I think, from policy perspective from City Council, that affordable housing would be a very important policy goal that we'd be trying to accomplish in the Virginia Village area. So some of the some of the takeaways from those meetings, and just for transparency, we met with True Ground. We met with Fairfax County Housing Authority. We met with the NHB Foundation, and we met with Community Housing Partners. The people who attended those meetings included our Director of Planning, Matt Matusik, myself, Cindy Mester, Jack Trainer, Dana Lewis, and Brendan Woodley. And so that was the staff component for those meetings. One of the kind of the key takeaways is that it's the sort of the sixth bullet in the list on page 4, that prior to obtaining financing for any kind of redevelopment on the site, any entity, a nonprofit partner, would want to know at least 3 things, and they would want to have clarity about site control. And that would probably be in the form of a contract of purchase and sale to that entity so that those terms are all spelled out. They would want to have clarity on their zoning entitlements at that time. How many units could they build? What would be the building height, the form of the buildings, those types of broad entitlements. They would want to have that in place. along with any proffer requirements or voluntary concession requirements. And then lastly, there would want to be clarity about what the local funding commitment would be, if any. And we need to work through that. I think it would be wise for us to bring on board a commercial real estate advisor with a specialty in affordable housing to advise us on that, to give us some independent view on what that typically would be. What we do see in Arlington County and Alexandria and other neighboring jurisdictions is that in redevelopment or building of new affordable housing, the local contribution can come to $80,000 to $120,000 per unit. And so that is a really significant thing for us to be thinking about in terms of what we can do in that area. And we've begun to sort of think through some sort of options that we might have if that ultimately were something that was needed for new affordable housing to be built on this site. And so those are some of the highlights that we did hear. We did sort of hear a general view of an appreciation for the roadmap. They appreciated being able to have that discussion about process. I kind of picked up a bit of a view that they thought the schedule was aggressive. And I think there is some wisdom that our planning director put out there that it's important that we get going on this. And if we sort of buy ourselves an extra year right from the beginning, that probably means we'll delay things on the front end. And I think it'd be useful for the community to get engaged in this sooner rather than later and to sort of keep that aggressive timeline in our mind. And next fall, we can assess whether it's still realistic or not. But that's sort of the way we've processed some of that feedback about the schedule. Maybe I'll stop there. I'd be happy to answer any questions and continue the conversation with the City Council.
Great. Before I open up for questions, just a clarification. The 80 to 120,000, is that inclusive of the land contribution? So do people give the land up and then give extra money on top of that, or what do we?
So it wasn't, we're not at the point to be able to be perfectly clear about that. But I think there's a kind of a whole menu of things that local governments do to try to help affordable housing be feasible. Land contributions, I think, naturally would help lower that or be part of that contribution. And but I don't have a clear answer on on that, and I don't think we really would have a clarity on that until we've done some pro formas on our own, probably with the help of an outside consultant.
Get it. Or tax abatement's probably part of that combination as well.
Yes.
I know that's a common thing that developers would ask for affordable housing. Okay. Questions or comments? Ms. Flynn?
I had the same question as you, Mayor, on where the 80 to 120 was coming from, and if the land, it takes into account that contribution. So it would be helpful to have an answer on that. Thank you for laying this out. I think, I'm not going to get into sort of detailed comments on it. I appreciate that, this likely is coming back to us for a work session, and would ask for that work session so that we can talk more about what, a schedule should look like, understanding the early input, sort of that the timeline for the LIHTC sort of driver is aggressive, and what the community engagement looks like when we have the conversation in November. They're sort of parallel tracks, but I want to make sure that we are leaving sufficient time for that conversation, keeping in mind sort of goals that we have to be able to be part of cycles and that they're realistic. The one thing that I wanted to add to the conversation that I'll end up bringing up at the retreat regardless, and I think that, have flagged for budget and finance conversations, is around the idea not only of what it takes for this project overall, to kind of take more form, but the type of planning we need to start doing in this budget cycle for things like potential relocation expenses, what those costs look like, the work we need to do now so that those funds are available later, the sort of vacancy rates that we have in the city at various buildings. It could be that, any potential relocation of residents not getting ahead of sort of where we are in this process is happening at the same time as the units are sunsetting in other places, including Pearson Square. And so you're talking about needing to relocate, something like 30 residents in quadplexes at the same time that you may have, another 15, occupants of ADUs looking for units in other places in the city that are affordable. And so, like market rate affordable. And so I would like for us to start thinking about, what are those gaps? What does it look like if, those sorts of, what does it look like to have those conversations in the context of sort of something that looks like the CCAU program, but also like what outreach does HHS need to start doing now to understand vacancy rates in other places whether it's Northgate or Tinner Hill or Merrill House, for example, to potentially start assembling the sort of units we might need for the population that is going to be most affected by sort of these things all happening at the same time in the next year or two. And financially, what decisions do we need to start thinking about now and planning for now to put ourselves and like those resident populations in the best place possible to be able to have serious conversations about what we're doing facing those conditions.
Thank you. Other comments? Ms. Connolly.
Thank you for this. It really gives a lot of information. A couple questions that, based upon what is there. You mentioned in the stakeholder outreach, it mentions the Winter Hill Condominium Board of Directors being included, but there are actually two homeowners associations there. There's the condominium and the townhouse HOA. So can you make sure that they're all included? Thank you. And then I don't know about the senior housing there as well, if they need to be included as well, but that would be a third group. One of the goals that we talked about too, and I can't remember if I read it in here or not, was that we don't just want this to be an affordable housing. We've talked about this being a mixed income housing community. And what that means, I remember it was probably 10 years ago, I was on one of our affordable living group committees, and one of the things that a developer said there was that LIHTC financing is very hard if it's not a 100% affordable housing development. So I was really pleased to see towards the end here the range of financing options that include, some don't have LIHTC or other federal funding, but can also lower overall costs, because I think that's important too, that we may or may not, if it's going to be a mixed income development, then the financing has to be a little bit different than what we sort of are envisioning. And I think you're right about the timing, that we may as well start and aim for the 2027 and see what we can do. That's how we built that high school and did the Westfall Station, like just keep going. And then if you have to take a break, you can, but we all know this has to be done, and I really appreciate Ms. Flynn's thoughts too about making sure that we are housing people and planning for that as well, because I think that's really important too. Thanks.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you for this briefing, Mr. Shields. Not for tonight, but at some point, can we expect an update on the fields?
Yes, I'm hopeful that we'll have something to update the council on soon.
Okay, great, thank you. And then so just curious, were you in terms of the local funding commitment, were you a little bit taken aback by that? Like it was more than you had anticipated?
So those are numbers that we have seen in projects in our region. So it was not new information, but it is, I think it is important for us to start wrestling with that.
Right.
And that's why I did kind of want to make sure it was here for us to start talking about that now. There will be strategies where I think we can meet that. And because and we'll talk about that in some more detail, but it's a big challenge. And so there's going to require us to think through some options and some trade-offs. Yeah.
Okay, and that's, to Ms. Flynn's point as well. I would just say, I did have some residents of Winter Hill townhouses reach out to me. And so as much as, and I know I appreciated there was a statement in your update that said, working with community members to look at the small area plan. And I also appreciated, in working on that small area plan, making sure that it's also realistic when it comes to developers and that sort of thing. So, just as much as we can to have the community involved for feedback at the front end and not go too far down the road and then, have a lot of community members. So thank you. I appreciate you, reaching out to the different stakeholders and, talking with the community members about the small area plan. But if we can just as much as we can and, keep that group informed, whether it's town halls or whatever. But again, more as close as we can at the front end and not too far down the line. But thank you. Appreciate it.
Mr. Snyder?
So I want to make sure at the beginning that we're looking at all options, including renovating the existing units and expanding those units. My fear is that the assumption is already being made, perhaps on a de facto basis, that we're going to tear them down and replace it with some big building. I guess from my standpoint, I want to make sure that we're going into this carefully and not eliminating alternatives and options before we even get started to look at the numbers. And relocating people, finding places, and then moving them back, et cetera, are both quality of life costs as well as economic costs. So that's what I want to make very careful, that we're not assuming a particular approach at this point, that we're continuing to weigh and balance both the economics and the results in terms of the number and quality of affordable units.
Okay.
That's a question, I guess.
I was understanding it as a comment. So what was the question?
The question is, have we determined an approach at this point?
So,
or have you, rather?
So I don't think that's staff's job. I think staff's job is to have a process where there can be a policy-driven vision for the future of the site. And so I do think I think what the city council ultimately is going to have to decide is, what are we trying to accomplish on this site with respect to affordable housing? And then ultimately, what other mixes of uses or what other things do we want to accomplish on this site? So I'm envisioning the process is going to be a way for the city council to make those policy decisions. It is, in terms of, to be totally transparent, I do envision that there would be a multi-story building there as kind of the only way to expand affordable housing on the site. But does that need to cover the full site? I think that there's a lot of opportunities for different things to be happening on the site, including market rate housing, including other uses. I think that's what the public process can help us grapple with. So I guess those are my thoughts, but also there's going to be a process where the council ultimately will make those decisions.
So let me just make one more comment that there are a fair number of affordable units there now with a lot of green space around them. Arguably, it's a very good place with some additional renovation. So I think my assumption is that all options ought to be on the table.
Okay, so to wrap up, so thank you to you and staff for kind of putting together this roadmap, because I think we had asked for several follow-ups since our last discussion. So I do think it was really important to start with kind of, again, the reminder of our affordable living policy that we unanimously adopted. What are we trying to accomplish across the entire city in terms of our affordable targets? So that was a really good refresher to see kind of, I think, that goal of if we really are going to hit our commitment of 6% of all housing in the city by 2040, we need 564 units. And then you can do the math to figure out, well, based on what we have already in the pipeline, what does that mean? What's expiring? What does that mean? And so I think that was important math up front for us all keep in mind of like, if this is our only bet in the city to kind of really make a serious dent for affordable housing, here's some rough numbers that we should be thinking of. So I think that was important context. And then second, to Mr. Snyder's point, like there are other goals that we also want to accomplish. And so I think laying out the process to revisit the small area plan and the comp plan is important so that we can figure out how to marry up both affordable housing goals, the broader goals we have the community, and figure out in this site, can we accomplish all those things and how to balance that together? So I thought that both the math that you showed as well as reminding us the process was good. My second comment, I think, is based on the preliminary conversations you've had, is there a recommendation from staff to change the roadmap in any way? Because I think the reason why we asked for the update today ahead of our council retreat session is where should this slot in terms of our priorities for the next 2 years? Like, did you hear anything that would be a showstopper such that it's like, oh my gosh, this needs to be a 3-year process instead, or here's how it needs to look dramatically different? Or do you think as is, this is something that council should weigh as part of our priority setting for the next 2 years?
Yeah, I would recommend that. Maybe one additional point, I think that the drafting of the RFP is going to be a real important point for us. One of the things that the developers said is they would really like the city to be very clear about what we want in that RFP. And are we going to be ready this spring to be that clear? I think that's going to be a real important point for our schedule. So that's just one thought that doesn't, to answer your question, I think it's a high priority and we need to engage, but I think we'll know as we're putting that RFP together whether this roadmap is going to be achievable.
Okay.
On the schedule that's laid out here.
Got it. So kind of third point, I think, is back to that $80,000 to $120,000 kind of per unit subsidy that they're looking to kind of local government for. I guess there's many ways to skin the cat, right, as we've talked about, whether it's an outright subsidy, whether it's a land contribution, whether it's a tax abatement, whether it's relief on parking. So one of the things you talk to developers about is that parking requirements is actually a huge contributor to developer costs. And so there are other ways that I want us to be thinking creatively that it's not just some capital cash outlay that we have to think about. So throughout the process, I want to make sure that we're very open to other solutions because it's not like we have $80,000, $120,000 per unit laying around, but we do have land and we have started acquiring, a significant number of units there. So I want staff to kind of bring those creative options to us so we can consider different ways to accomplish that goal. My third point, I think, or fourth now, is around what Ms. Flynn has brought up several times. So I don't want to wrap up the expiring unit conversation with this because it's important enough that we pay attention to it. So I guess I would request maybe like just scheduling separate council time to talk about what is our game plan on the various units that expire. I know lots of people are talking about the 96 units at the Fields. Pearson, I think we've talked about, but before long, Reed is also going to expire. And then after that, we've got Northgate, West Broad, and other ones. And so that feels like that merits enough of a strategy discussion. And if that's another input into, this is why the Fields or figuring out Virginia Village is really important because we have no other strategy. So I want to make sure that we don't lose that point because I think a tragedy that I think we are dealing with is that in the past, units expired faster than we can build them. And now we have an opportunity to do something about it. And so I guess I would request separate council time so we don't mix up the expiration discussion with the Virginia Village discussion that merits a lot more discussion. So if we could pencil that in for kind of I have a running list of future scheduling items as we look at 2026. I want to make sure that that gets separate time. Final point. As we embark on this kind of big priority for council, is there anything at Virginia Village that requires any sort of stabilization? Or do we feel pretty good between the maintenance that we've done, the rehab, I think, other than the South Maple unit that we've chosen to leave vacant because of the poor condition it's in. Is there any other like stabilizing things that we need to do for the residents there?
No. I think that South Maple property is one that we need to make a decision on. We've kind of held off on a decision because of sort of kind of big overall strategic decisions we need to make, of which that's an important part. But having a vacant building there is not good.
Okay. And is there like a timeline you'd recommend, or does that dovetail well with kind of the Virginia Village timeline that we're on already?
I think the next time we talk about Virginia Village, we need to have sort of a module where we talk about that quadplex and start to engage on demolition or rehab.
Okay.
That decision point.
Okay. Thank you. So more to come. So I guess what I hear as the takeaway is that aggressive, but still something that council should seriously consider as a priority in our next work plan when we meet this weekend. Okay. Great. Well, thank you. Look forward to the next steps on this then. So I think we're actually moving off the manager's report and actually getting to business on the agenda. Is there anything else in your report, Mr. Shields?
No.
Okay. Thank you. Moving on to business on the agenda. Madam Clerk, can you call the first item, please?
TO 25-21 is an ordinance to amend the city code of the City of Falls Church, Chapter 48 zoning, Article 1 in general, amending the half-story definition and Article 5 supplementary regulations, Division 6, height, lot, and yard regulations, deleting sections 48-1104, conditional uses permitted by special use permit as an obsolete section, and amending Division 9 antennas, clarifying regulations applying to all antenna types.
So I believe we have, I can't see the screen, but I believe Mr. Matusik is joining us virtually, or a member of the planning staff. Is that true?
Hello, can you all hear me?
We can. Good evening.
All right, good evening. Yes, indeed. I'm here to represent the Planning and Housing Divisions on this item as they collaborated to identify several technical clarifications to the city code. These are not substantive, but rather technical, which staff may bring forward from time to time. The zoning amendments in front of you are here for a second reading and final consideration. Since the first reading, which took place in November of 2025, the Planning Commission voted unanimously 7-0 to recommend approval of the proposed amendments at their December 3rd meeting. Staff has not received any further comments during this time, and the proposed zoning language, as captured in the ordinance, has not changed since the first reading. Therefore, staff recommends adoption of TO 25-21, and I'm available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Do we have any questions for Mr. Matusik since first reading? Okay. I think this is a second reading and public hearing, so I'm going to open up for any members of the public who would like to comment on this item. There's really no members of the public here, so I'm going to assume there's no public comment and nothing virtually as well. Okay, so I'm going to close the public hearing. Is there a motion then?
Move to adopt TO 25-21.
Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Connolly in the second. Can you call roll, please?
Mr. Egan?
Yes.
Ms. Connolly?
Yes.
Ms. Downs?
Yes.
Ms. Flynn?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Ms. Underhill?
Yes.
And Mayor Hardy.
Yes.
The motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Let's call the next item then.
TR 26-05 is a resolution naming the city-owned parkland located at the property formerly known as 604 South Oak Street, currently known as 310 Fellows Court, 306 Parker Avenue, 304 Parker Avenue, 302 Parker Avenue, 502 South Oak Street, 302 Fellows Court, and 304 Fellows Court, with the real property code numbers listed, and anticipated to be consolidated to the address 500 South Oak Street, RPC number to be determined.
And we're joined by Deputy Rec and Parks Director Amy Youngs, and she'll provide a brief staff report on this.
Okay, good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for your time tonight. As we discussed at the work session earlier this month, that we are moving closer to construction on the new park on South Oak Street. This evening, staff is requesting a motion to solicit park name recommendations from the general public, select boards and commissions, and to set and advertise a public hearing in March. From the long, lengthy name that you heard Ms. Veronica read off, there are a few clarifying updates to the staff report. They're all related to the property address. So we commonly refer to the site as 604 South Oak Street, but it was subdivided years ago, and it's currently made up of the 7 plats with 7 addresses. There is a Planning Commission public hearing scheduled for February, which will consolidate the lots with the new proposed address of 500 South Oak Street. So you'll see that clarification in the title, the request, and on the resolution in the staff report. Everything else is the same. As a reminder, the city code establishes the criteria for naming city facilities can be named after the facility's geographical, historical, or ecological context, with exceptions to commemorate an individual service or help identify the facility's purpose. Recreation and Parks will promote an online forum for public submissions, and the boards and commissions we plan to go to are Planning Commission, Historical Commission, City School Board, Arts and Humanities Council, and the Recreation and Parks Advisory Board. We would then consolidate the name recommendations, bring them back to you for a work session, followed by a public hearing on March 23rd, where the park would then be named by council by resolution. Since the last work session that we were here for, there was a request for better, clear public communication about the park plans. So we have updated the website and we have a visual rendering that is almost ready and will get up on the website soon. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Youngs? Okay. Any public comment? I guess there will be a public process for it. Okay, is there a motion?
I move to solicit park name recommendations from the general public, the Public Commission, the Historical Commission, the Recreation and Parks Advisory Board, the Arts and Humanities Council of Falls Church, and the Falls Church City School Board, and to set and advertise a public hearing on TR 26-05 for March 23rd, 2026.
Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Flynn on the second. Call roll, please.
Mr. Agan.
Yes.
Ms. Connolly.
Yes.
Ms. Downs.
Yes.
Ms. Flynn.
Yes.
Mr. Snyder.
Yes.
Ms. Underhill.
Yes.
And Mayor Hardy.
Yes.
Thank you, Council. The motion carries.
If I could just make a brief comment. I think this is now the 4th or 5th park we are naming in the past 5 years in the city. And so I think for something that we often hear about is needing more green space and add open space to our city, I think it's quite remarkable in 2.3 square miles that we are adding parks where we can. And so appreciate this work of staff and also the public's taxpayer dollars going towards these kind of acquisitions. So thank you for that. Okay, let's call the next item, please.
TR 26-04 is a resolution to approve a wastewater capacity sale and purchase agreement between the City of Falls Church and Fairfax County.
And I'm going to invite Deputy City Manager Andy Young to give the staff report on this.
Right, good evening, Council. Thanks for the opportunity to come speak with you all this evening. I'm here virtually with my counterparts, Senior Sanitary Sewer Engineer Reza Ravandust and City Engineer Tahir Benabdi. And we're here to present the city's sanitary sewer capacity purchase agreement with Fairfax County for your final consideration and approval. We'll provide a quick recap of the main components of the agreement, and then we have 2 primary follow-up items to share with you based on our conversation at the January 12th work session. The next step, pending your approval tonight, will be for Fairfax County Board of Supervisors to review and approve the agreement, which we'd anticipate taking place by April of this year. So, Taya, if you could do me a favor and pull up the slides and go to slide 3 for me, please.
So just as a recap of, well, maybe back up one for me, please. There we go. So to recap what we talked about last time, the agreement before you this evening is essentially split into two separate but connected transactions. The first one is the $8.8 million capacity purchase, which we would do this year in 2026. These are the parameters you've seen before: 1.5 million gallons a day of treatment capacity, a maximum total daily volume of 3 million gallons a day, and a peak flow limit of 5.38 million gallons per day. The new element to the agreement, which we talked about at the work session, is a $6.8 million purchase in 2027, or would likely be for us in FY28. And that would increase the city's peak flow limit to 7 million gallons per day. And this consists of the city's contribution to the sanitary sewer relocation and upsizing project south of the city in Trips Run. So I'm happy to go through any of the other slides with you all this evening, but I think we'll skip to kind of the new material that we've got for you this evening. Tay, if you could go to slide 9 for me, please. So we talked a bit last time about costs and kind of which costs were included, and so we reorganized the information we provided you last time for a little more clarity. And so the two elements associated with this agreement are the 2026 capacity purchase and then the 2027, what I'm calling here, Trips Run sewer expansion. The 2026 capacity purchase that we make this year, we would be using availability fees for that we have in hand. And the Trips Run sewer expansion, which we're projecting would be in FY28, would be used, we would be issuing debt for that at that time. And we'd pay for that debt through the growth in subscriber base to our sewer system to help cover the cost. The next group of items on the chart are what I'll call our annual program capital costs. So these are costs that you all see in the CIP every year. Our annual sewer rehab work, that's money we invest in the system here in the city. And then the Arlington and Alex Renew capital contributions. These are the numbers, these reflect the latest information we've received. What we typically see in each year is that the actual expenses that come in from each of those jurisdictions are a little less than the projections. So we consider these figures kind of up here, worst case based on what we know today. So then finally, the batch at the bottom are our future capital expenditures. These you'll hear more about in the upcoming CIP, but we're proposing to move forward on the sanitary sewer master plan in FY27 and potentially considering downstream upsizing in the Tinner Hill subshed of a section of the system. And then finally, the future capacity purchase that's reflected on this chart in FY30 would be an expense the city would need should the growth in the sewer requirements in the city dictate it, and that we've collected availability fees to pay for it. Any questions on this slide?
Thank you for the clarification and reorganizing. This is helpful.
Yep. So we'll go ahead and move on to slide 10 as the other new material for this evening. So Reza helped us put together a chart of our average daily flow through the city over the last 10 plus years. So going back to the data we've got back to 2014, 2015. So as you can see with the yellow line, the trend line's approaching the current limit of 1 million gallons a day, which is why we're kind of making the capacity purchase this evening. Okay, so I had another chart that I doctored up, but we're gonna run with this one. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the variation you see in the chart, and ties back to a discussion we had at the work session about rainflow-induced inflow and infiltration. So if you look on the chart, the January 2017 low point followed an autumn of below average rainfall. So you can, one of the things that the engineering team can, do is use these sustained dry periods as a proxy for the true sanitary sewer flow in the system. So the average daily flow at about that time in 2017 was about 0.7 million gallons per day. The second half of 2025, on the right-hand side of the chart, the second half of 2025 has actually been drier than the 2017 period earlier, and reasonably represents our true sanitary sewer flow today. So that's around 0.9 million gallons per day. So then when you take the difference between the two of those, ties in pretty well with our anticipated growth in the system usage. It's around 0.2 million gallons per day, or around 28% due to the new development, and other changes here in the city. So the difference between the dry trough, like in looking at 2017, and the wet year peak, which is there, I think, kind of at the beginning of 2019, it's largely attributable to rainfall sensitivity in the system. With inflow and infiltration being the dominant driver, you can see here the difference between the dry trough of 0.7 million gallons a day and the wet peak of 1.1 million gallons per day. It's roughly 0.4 million gallons a day. So you can see the difference that just kind of the annual weather can make in how much our sewer system's getting used. So based on the available data, it's reasonable to think that roughly 2/3 of the difference that we're seeing here is attributable to inflow and infiltration, with the remainder reflecting rolling average smoothing, delayed system response to elevated groundwater, and some embedded effects of growth and seasonal usage. There's some other stuff going on too, but taken together, the chart provides a reasonable kind of high-level snapshot of how wet weather conditions influence the long-term flows in the city's sanitary sewer system. Does anybody have any questions on that?
Can I just?
Actually, I have a question on I&I. I'm glad to see this. I was going to make a comment that I think we're right at the beginning of a wonderful opportunity with a natural experiment, because we just put a whole reservoir of a tremendous amount of liquid right on top of everything. And so for the next couple of weeks, I think we're going to have a great opportunity to see what happens with I&I, because eventually all of this will melt.
Hopefully not too fast. Or hopefully it does melt fast, I guess, depending on kind of how.
Well, we don't want it to melt fast and flood. We want it to seep in, and I think it'll give you a wonderful indication of I&I. You'll just see a boop, boop, boop.
Actually, can I piggyback on that? So that's an interesting comment. Do we have, maybe you've said this to us before, but I missed it. Do we have, and I know, Mr. Shields, you've always said that we can't the infrastructure can't handle more than 2 inches of rain an hour. I think you had told us a while back. Is that right?
This is sort of, I'm not sure all of the hydrologists would agree with me, but I've sort of, the folk wisdom is about 1 inch in 20 minutes is the peak of what our system can handle.
I'm sorry. So when we hit, is that when that really is the I&I is when we have those really?
No, it's a little different. It's
okay.
Well, I should let Reza or others speak to it, but one thing that can happen if you have a big flood, then water can get into the system in a dramatic way.
Okay.
The other way it can get in is if there's just a sustained wet period over months and the groundwater is much higher.
Okay.
And the sewer line acts almost like a French drain. It's just sort of collecting drips and drabs there.
Okay.
But again, I should let the experts speak to it.
Well, no, I mean, that answers my, I just wasn't clear. I knew that the rainwater was the issue. I just wasn't sure. So it could go either way.
That's right.
Okay, thanks.
I will comment that during the tour we had, and we were up at the house, they had a very dramatic photo there of a sewer pipe that had been cut right through by, I guess, a Verizon conduit. And so, yeah, that was a dramatic picture that maybe you might want to use if you want to make a dramatic effect of the problems that we have. It was quite the photo.
Anecdotally, I think our population growth from 2014 to 2025 change in that 10-year span or so is 20 to 30% increase in housing units and population, correct? That's
Well, we have to be mindful of the fact that we're talking about just, the Trips Run watershed is about half of the city. And so not all the population growth was here. So there's, the numbers get a little bit more complicated. Mr. Ravandus did have his hand up, I noticed.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. So good evening, Mayor and Council. Apologies, I'm having a technical issue with my camera, so I'm unable to turn it on. So circling back to what Mr. Shields and Mr. Young just mentioned regarding the graphs that we have, which is a rolling annual average flow here. So as we can see here, the difference between the dry weather and all the peaks that we have here in the highest point around January, around maybe January, May, around May 2019 or earlier of that one, all the difference represent the amount that contributed into our system, and that's some sort of the behavior that our system respond to the wet weather, which is really dominant with the INI, and other items are also contributing to those peaks as well, like the seasonal water use behavior that we have here. Also, the timing with the rolling window that we have really affect this difference, and the operational and data smoothing effect. And also, as Ms. Downs just mentioned, the system response lag also here. So when we get the rain, so it takes time that rains and all the soil around in the ground just gets saturated and just get into the system. So with all of those, definitely we are seeing this kind of stuff. The INI is there, and definitely what trend is technically just showing that we really need to just look at both a wet side and also in terms of the capacity side as well, which is the baseline of the flow as well. So. And also really quick, circling back to what Mr. Agan just mentioned, that so definitely within the city, we are trying to just identify the area that contribute to INI, and one of the program that we have in place is the lining, which has been around since 2004, and it's moving forward. So far, we just move about 65% of the lining, and that program is really help reducing the amount of the INI. Also, at the same time, we are just inspecting our mains to ensure we are identifying any areas that allows any groundwater, any inflow or infiltration get into our system. As he mentioned, so in James Thurber Court, Verizon just hit our pipe and just damage a good portion of the sewer main that provide a really good opportunity for INI. So city is working toward those areas that can really limit and minimize the amount of the INI into our system. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. I know we often talk about like climate change impacting extreme weather. And I think here a good manifestation is seeing these kind of like really wet years, how it actually impacts something that's very unglamorous like INI in our sewer system. So thank you for showing us the data that corresponds with the anecdotes that we know those really wet summers were.
So I think it's kind of in summary, staff recommends approval of the capacity of purchase agreement with Fairfax County. We believe this is an agreement that meets both the needs of both the city and the county, provides us with the capacity to support ongoing and future growth in the city, and avoids the operational risks associated with building, kind of our previous solution that we've talked about before. Any additional questions?
Do we have a date on when the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors is going to hear this?
Still pending.
And I assume their staff recommendation is to approve the
Yes.
agreement?
Well, I just think, for any public listening to this, just to bring up the fact that this approach is saving us $4 million, I think. Is that right? Had we gone.
That's the difference in the cost estimates that we're facing today.
Right.
Yes.
Right. So that's considerable. Thank you. And I,
Plus
as.
maintenance.
I'm sorry?
Plus maintenance.
Yes, so that's true. And I did, not to talk about this tonight, but we were talking about I&I, and I did find it interesting at the end of your slides, talking about at some point incentivizing residents to help us cut down on I&I. I thought that was really interesting. So that's a conversation for another day, I'm sure, but I did pick up on that. I thought that was really interesting. But thank you for this good work. I know it's been a really long, tough behind the scenes. I know you've been doing a lot of work on this, so thank you for this.
Mr. Snyder?
Thank you. I'd like to focus on slide 10 for a minute. So we note that the gold line, that's the overall demand, right? The demand has been increasing over that period of time. Is that right? The baseline,
Yes, that's
what I'll
correct.
call the baseline demand.
Yes, sir.
And then what you've done is you've traced various things. So it stands to reason as your baseline demand goes up, any I&I will run a greater risk of kicking over the acceptable limit than otherwise would have been the case. So I want to make that contrary argument that it isn't only I&I, it's the fact that your overall demand line is greater over the years as a result of growth, which raises the amount of usage and brings you closer to the old limit where I&I can put you over. So that's one
understand
point that
what
I
you're
want to
saying.
make.
Yep.
So it's really a synergy of those two things operating. You're raising the overall demand level, ordinary demand level, closer to the amount that we were permitted under Fairfax County, and then that rare storm event kicked us over a couple times. So the next question is, at the height of it, we were at 1.2, so why are we buying 1.5?
So the growth in the city is continuing, right? So this is.
So it's growth. That's the point that I want to make. The difference between 1.2, which was near our peak so far, and the amount that we're buying is to pay for growth. Thanks. The next question is then on page 9, slide 9, we talk about funding source availability fees for the 8.7, but for the 6.8, that's debt financing. Is that right? So who pays that debt?
So the ratepayers for the sewer system.
And that's all the ratepayers. That's single-family homeowners as well as the multifamily. So
Correct.
basically, everybody in the city is going to pay for that,
Correct.
right? Because everybody uses it one way or the other, right? So,
Yep.
okay, well, that's a key point, so that really everybody is paying for the difference that we're now, we're buying in terms of growth, most of which would come from new multifamily buildings. So those are the only 2 points that I wanted to make, but I do want to commend the overall improvement in the approach over where we were a year or so ago. But I think my take is somewhat different, that a lot of this cost is driven by growth, both currently, some of which was paid for, and the growth in the future is going to be paid for by everybody. Thanks.
Ms. Underhill?
I just wanted to thank you for this presentation. Thank you for working with Fairfax. I'm glad to see that this option came forward. My understanding is that even before a lot of the new mixed use, we were still exceeding our peak flow agreement with Fairfax. And so in some ways, this is a legacy issue that had been kicked down the road for a while, and would need to be addressed at some point, whether or not we had new buildings or not, specifically the peak flow issue.
So we've been working at addressing inflow and infiltration in the city for a long time, right? I think Reza kind of mentioned we've had a relining program since 2004. So the old agreement that we were living under didn't have the kind of constraints that the new agreement is under, right? And so by needing to go make this capacity purchase, it's kind of opened the door for Fairfax to kind of make some additional kind of demands of us from a peak flow standpoint. If you look at the chart in the 2018 and the 2021 kind of timeframes, we didn't have the constraints on us that the new agreement's having on us. So the additional conveyance capacity and everything in the agreement before you all this evening helps address that.
Gotcha. I guess from my perspective, given that we've had these issues for a while, especially with older homes, it does make sense to have this be paid for by the taxpayer, specifically because this is something that affects the entire city, and it's something that we would have likely had to address no matter what. So thank you.
Yeah, on that point, I guess, I think the thing that some of us seem to be missing is that both things can be true, right? So we are making a capacity purchase because of growth, and we're using availability fees that growth developers, builders, pay into to pay for that. And we also have a legacy I&I issue that everyone should be responsible for because that has predated any of the growth. And I think this data that Reza is showing us, where we have big storms in particular years, showing us that we exceed that. So rather than continue debate or even whip out my Algebra 1 book on calculating slope, because really this is what we're arguing over, I think if we can all just acknowledge that both things can be true, we are both increasing our capacity purchase because of growth, and we are using developer fees to pay for that, and we are solving a legacy issue that the entire city should pay towards. Both things are true in this case. So I'd like to at least put that to bed because I think this data that staff's shown us is pretty clear on that. Mr. Egan.
Actually, you just stole what I was going to say. I was going to say that we're really dealing with two different issues here, the peak flow and the growth. And the growth is being paid for with the 8.7, and that's availability fees. So the new buildings put in money to handle the growth and increase our capacity, and they are paying for it. And then we have a problem with peak flow, which is I&I, which is coming from maybe some other areas, but it's unclear, but it's not specific to just the new buildings and new areas. And correct me if I'm wrong, that's the 6.7 is really dealing with that issue. So we have two issues, two different charges. One is being paid for, one is related to growth and being paid for by the new buildings. The other one is related to the age of the system and the fact that standards were different back in the day, and and that is then coming in. The one thing that I would like to know though is, I keep going back to this very dramatic photo, and I know that my understanding is that Verizon's going to pay to fix that sewer pipe that they chopped through. It was very dramatic, but would they also be asked to contribute towards the 6.7 since that's an I&I issue, a peak flow issue that they also may have contributed to over the years. Not all of this is because of an old system. Other organizations may have been doing things, or if somebody illegally hooked up their sump pump into the sewer system more recently. When we discover that, do we ask them to carry some of the cost of this 6.7 that they're contributing to?
So I think the complexity of the city sewer system that we're looking at makes kind of digging, trying to figure out, okay, the Verizon cut in the one pipe contributed to how many gallons in the system over what period of time. Like, I think it gets to a level of kind of complexity that I don't believe it's practical for the city staff to pursue those things. There's hundreds of miles of sewer pipe in the city, right? Like, all the individual kind of instances of things going on is part of kind of the challenge of managing a system like we have. So I don't think there's a way to kind of get it charging a tiny portion of that $6.7 million to any individual instance. My 2 cents.
It's a good thought. What I wanted to get to, though, Andy, is I didn't want all this to detract from actually our gratitude for getting us to the finish line, because I think, as Ms. Downs said, this has been a long time just coming, and it's been rough to not have a great solution. And so to come out on the other side with a better solution without long-term maintenance costs and lower upfront costs, I think is a win. So thank you for all the hard work and all the negotiations and collaboration with Fairfax County.
Yep. Good team effort. A lot of members of staff contributed to this. City Attorney Sally Gillette was instrumental. She and I had a number of discussions with Fairfax County, and the Fairfax County folks, I think, have been good partners with us. So I think that helped as well.
Terrific. We'll be share our thanks with the Board of Supervisors when we see them as well. And somehow you've ended up with all of the dirty projects between solid waste and now sewer. So we are very grateful for handling both of these hairy and dirty solutions for us. So, is there a motion?
I move to adopt TR 26-04.
Is there a second?
Second.
Connolly in the second. You can call roll, please.
Mr. Egan?
Yes.
Ms. Connolly?
Yes.
Ms. Downs?
Yes.
Ms. Flynn?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yeah.
Ms. Underhill?
Yes.
And Mayor Hardy?
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you, council.
Thank you all.
So keep us posted, I guess, when the Board of Supervisors approves on their end as well. Thank you. Okay, let's call the final item on formal business, the budget amendment.
TO 26-01 is an ordinance to amend Ordinance 2090 and Ordinance 2103 regarding the budget of expenditures and revenue and appropriating funds for the fiscal year 2026 General Fund, School Operating Fund, and Capital Improvement Program.
And Mr. So is here to give the staff report on this.
All right, thank you, Mr. Shields, and good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and members of the council. Tonight, we are presenting this budget amendment ordinance TO 26-01 to request to appropriate our contingency into our city attorney and public works departments for a total of $250,513, to appropriate $10,000 of opioid abatement funds and $30,000 of e-summon funds, as well as to transfer $35,000 between capital projects and to appropriate school operating fund balance of $1,064,000. There is no additional funding requested in this budget amendment, only a transfer of budget between departments and between capital projects. From our work session, we have reduced the city attorney's appropriation by $50,000 as they have continued to refine the cost estimates for outside legal counsel. And we've also included the $10,000 opioid abatement funds and $30,000 e-summon funds. You can also find more details in the budget amendment, and I'm happy to take any questions from the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. So. We have questions on the budget amendment. Okay.
I just wanted to, Mr. So, just thank you for, I think some of us had asked for some clarification about the school fund balance, and so I found that helpful. So thank you for including all of that information.
Okay, is there a motion?
Move to grant first reading to TO 26-01, schedule public hearing and second reading for February 9th, 2026, and advertise the same according to law.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's Connolly in the second. Call roll, please.
Mr. Egan?
Yes.
Ms. Connolly? Yes. Ms. Downs?
Yes.
Ms. Flynn?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Ms. Underhill?
Yes.
Mayor Hardy?
Yes.
Thank you, Council. The motion carries 7-0.
Okay, on consent, we have 3 appointments. Is there anybody who wants to take anything off consent for discussion? Any comments from the appointments committee?
I would just say for the record, so we have the 3 appointments, that we have multiple vacancies on the CACT, and then we decided at this point in time to move one of the candidates forward for appointment, but are still keeping everyone sort of in that pool under consideration until we complete more interviews during the February appointments committee meeting.
I think we have 2 more vacancies that we'll consider filling after we finish interviews in February.
Right.
Hopefully this gives the CACT another body that they'll have their meeting in January. So. Okay, is there a motion for consent then?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second?
It was Egan on the second. Call roll, please.
Mr. Egan?
Yes.
Ms. Connolly?
Yes.
Ms. Downs?
Yes.
Ms. Flynn?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Ms. Underhill?
Yes.
Mayor Hardy?
Yes.
Thank you.
Other than schedule, is there any other things not on the agenda? Council liaison reports or council member comments before we get to schedule?
Just quickly, there was the letter from the ESC, or was it from FC Can, regarding the possibility of solar panels on Mary Ellen Henderson. And I just wanted to flag that again for budget planning, Mr. Shields. Is that, it's 2 years out in the CAC, or in the CIP?
It is, and that's been based on the replacement schedule for the roof. The point is made about the tax credits, and so that was new to me. Maybe it wasn't to others, but I will follow up with staff just on their thoughts on that. And obviously, the City Council will be the final decider when you adopt the CIP in May, and so you'll have a good opportunity to have that discussion and
Right.
make a decision on that.
I just want to make sure that's part of the CIP conversation. It seems like something that, if there's a way to speed it up a year, it would save us some funding. So thanks for Mr. Troutman for bringing that to our attention.
Kind of schedule related, but I know we were all, most of us were part of that restaurant roundtable a month ago or so. And I know, I think it's getting rescheduled because it was originally going to be scheduled when we were gone at VML. So now I think it is February 10th?
I think it is.
Is that? I think there were some suggestions that moving it later.
Do it a
given
little
some
later.
conflicts. But I don't know whether that's settled or not. I guess that's
I
why,
don't either.
for schedule reasons, is, like I have Housing Commission, for example, probably from like 6:30 to 8, so I
I
don't
think
know.
that's
People,
the only conflict.
So that might not be a good time at all.
well, I don't know, I mean, I'm happy to meet at 8, I guess, but the restaurateurs usually are busy during dinner season, service anyway. Anyway, do people have a preference? Just thought we should try to lock that down before schedules get. Oh, you're out, okay.
Yeah, I think it's important to be responsive to the restaurant community. That's why when I saw the suggestion to then postpone it another 2 weeks, I was kind of disappointed by that feedback that came in, because I looked at it as it came off as, okay, it's a barrier. And I think we want to be see if we can figure things out. I know they suggested Tuesday or Wednesday. The Wednesday was just, second Wednesday of the month is terrible for scheduling anything. But I think we do want to try to be responsive to them.
So I think later in the evening on the 10th seemed to be more open.
So Wyatt, if EDO is handling scheduling, could we look at later on February 10th, I guess is?
When you say later, we're talking like 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock?
Oh, no.
8, I think would be fine.
8, okay.
Or 7:30 even.
Okay. If that works for everybody, I think it would be very helpful if we could land on a date. So with that then, we'll try to make that happen.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, so schedule.
Before we get to schedule, I had one comment. We received the feedback on the Virginia, the 250, and was that going to be were we going to be briefed on that, or how is that going to work? Because I had some questions, one around the Civic Jam, which this is the first time I've heard of that. I like the idea, hate the name, but I like the idea. And it could also actually be a catalyst for an event that could continue. That we do it for the 250 and then we just plan, see if it works and say, hey, this could be an annual event, because we've been looking for opportunities. But sorry, but I hate the name Civic Jam.
Sure.
It's the civic part of it. It doesn't feel like something that could be continued. And the jam, good, kind of party, but civic just sounds very boring, kind of. Like, we want to give it energy. We want to give it excitement. That's why I'm not thrilled with the name. But I'm flexible on that. I'm like,
Okay. If you have ideas for the name, I'm sure the 250 committee will be interested.
yeah, I like the idea. I'm just wondering, is this something that we can extend and keep going? And
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'll connect you two right here. Here's the liaison 250, and if you have input, share it with Dave to.
Yeah.
I love the banners they're up.
Yeah.
The banners are nice.
Thanks for that. Appreciate it.
Okay. Other things before we get to schedule?
Legislative committee on Friday at, 9 or 9:30, Cindy?
I think it's
She's
9.
still on.
Yeah, I think we have that for
9 o'clock, conference room.
Cindy, while I've got you, it's HB 1330 and then SB 84 is the equivalent Senate bill on the cameras.
Yes.
It's Siebold in the House and Williams-Graves in the Senate.
Yep, I was just double checking the log that our interns just sent me tonight for the meeting. Thank you.
Yeah, the nuance, I think that, on the surface, the bill was great, but I think the reason why VML opposed it last year is because it sent the money to Richmond and sent it back to the localities. And so that's a conversation I had with Delegate Siebold last year, is if you could modify it so that the money could be allocated towards like traffic improvement or, public, traffic calming projects, like that would make more sense rather than send fines to Richmond. So I don't know if that's part of our talking point on both of those, or at least we could review the bill, see whether it still says that or not.
Sure.
Thank you.
I think it says it.
That it's still going to Richmond?
No, that it must be used for traffic calming by the locality. So.
Okay, schedule. Wyatt?
Okay, so we'll hit, I think we've got the schedule up on the screen now. So tomorrow, the mayor's agenda meeting with staff is canceled. The GovOps committee would meet at 12:30 as opposed to the 9 a.m. time slot. The agenda for that meeting is a review of the permits assessment that we've done with our permitting staff and with community input and contractor input. So we'll go through the report on that assessment and look forward to the next steps that are called for in terms of permit process improvements. And we can also take just a little bit of the GovOps committee meeting, also just to review the agenda for the council retreat coming up on Saturday. Right after tonight's meeting, I will email out to the council the draft agenda so people can review that perhaps in the morning before that GovOps committee meeting. As just discussed, we have the Ledge Committee on Friday at 9 a.m. And then on Saturday, the council planning retreat, we'll have sort of an 8:30 mix and mingle time. And then at 9 o'clock, we want to start sort of firmly at 9 o'clock and then proceed with the agenda and hopefully wrap up by 2 in the afternoon. The location for that is at the Hilton Garden Inn.
When is the snow or more snow might come? Is it Saturday? Maybe.
Yeah, right in the middle of the council retreat.
I don't know. Everything I've heard to this is so far they think it's going to stay off the coast. So
Yeah.
if we see it veering forward, then we can figure.
I think people are thrown off because Apple Weather has been giving really big numbers, and then if you look at some of the better ones, they're like, yeah, we'll get a dusting.
Okay. Well, let's hope that's the case. Guess we'll circle back
Okay.
on Friday should things deteriorate.
Sure.
Okay.
February 2nd work session, joint with the Urban Forestry Committee. So we'll have a read ahead of the DMV moves material and a quick staff briefing on that. That's a setup for COG joining the council on February 9th and the request of council to adopt a resolution in support of DMV moves. We'll have the facilities chapter update, a staff briefing on that. This would be the last, actually, we talked about this at the last meeting. We are envisioning this to be the last work session prior to final action on it at an upcoming meeting, and we'll get to that shortly. But I did want to clarify that point. That's staff's intention, and of course, the city council will make that determination after you've reviewed the draft. Review the tree canopy zoning code amendment, discuss contract approvals, discuss council rules of procedure, have a briefing on shared mobility devices, AKA scooters, and then have a discussion of the contract authorization for greening of Lincoln. That's the stormwater components for greening of Lincoln.
I just had, one question on the schedule that I think we had talked about, and that's whether it would make sense to put the tree canopy zoning code amendment like first before the other items if we were having UFC there so that they weren't potentially sitting through the first two items.
Yes, I think we can do that. So then the fourth agenda meeting, and then at 9, the Ask the Council meeting. On Thursday, it's VML Local Government Day. That's February 5th. And then on February 9th, the regular meeting, we'll have the CACT annual report. We'll have a presentation from COG on DMV moves. We'll ask council action on the MOU for Virginia Village properties with the EDA. Final second reading on the budget amendment. First reading on the tree canopy ordinance. Action on the DMV moves resolution. And council action on the contract authorization for the stormwater improvements for the greening of Lincoln.
And are we adding the planning commission report that wasn't delivered tonight? Is that February 9th?
They asked for February 23rd,
Oh,
I
23rd,
think,
yeah.
but we currently have 2 other reports that night. So that's what happens. They start piling up. But we'll coordinate on that because there aren't any reports. Well, we have CACT. So it might be good to have 2 on February 9th and 2 on February 23rd as opposed to 3 on February 23rd.
And ideally, the report should just be 5 minutes from each group, but I know they often go a little longer than that.
CACT is liable to go a little bit longer.
Hey, it's a different chair. They might be quick. Like Mr. Talkie.
For Local Government Day, are we planning our traditional dinner that night as well? Cindy?
Yes, we are, and I'll have a schedule for the day at our legislative committee meeting this Friday morning, because there's also several receptions between all our legislative activities and the dinner. Some networking opportunities.
So we have put on the schedule then that February 10th restaurant roundtable, and we'll confirm that with the restaurant group and the EDO. February 17th is the Tuesday after President's Day, so we're trying to keep agendas clear for that meeting and cancel that work session. We would have a Budget and Finance Committee on February 20th, and that's our mid-year financial report, and we've got a kind of a good agenda set up for that we worked through with the chair. And we typically are using those numbers that come out of that second quarter, that mid-year financial report to really set the revenue expectations for the budget presentation you'll get on March 23rd. Then, of course, in April, we have the third quarter financial report, and sometimes we tweak the numbers based on what we learned from that.
Can I just make a quick comment on the appointments committee time? Just from my previous experience, because there's so much on the second Wednesday, when the appointments committee is looking at positions within one of the committees that's meeting that night, in this case, CACT has 2 openings, it gets really disruptive for the chair to step out. I believe they start at 7 or 7:30. If there's any way the appointments committee could meet earlier and then do them first, just from experience, it would be less disruptive for the committee meeting. And they could even start half hour later or something. I'm just going to throw that out there. Up to you guys, though.
We don't have our start time conflict. You have a meeting that same night as well, though, right? Ms. Hardy? You don't anymore.
It used to be me.
It used to be you.
No, we don't have
Okay.
it. And we had, Veronica had helpfully started at 7:30 in January to give me an opportunity to roll off Rec and Parks for that January meeting, but then it was canceled. But we can, start at 7, and if we're doing, I guess, CACT, and have a conflict,
could do those
depends on the
first.
3 of us, how early we want to get there or start.
I'm happy to post for whatever time.
I think CACT, I think it starts at 7. And so that was the issue that we had last time, was that Stu was going to have to step out in the middle of the meeting as we were discussing council, what they wanted to set for their priorities. And so it was a little bit difficult. I think they ended up not joining the appointments meeting, even though they wanted to.
Yeah, and then actually, I think it was my last one. It was very easy to move the CACT start time a little later.
Okay. So for this upcoming one, can we move the CACT to 7:30 and the appointments committee to 7 o'clock on the 11th? Okay. In the future, once we finish interviewing CACT people, there is another meeting, though, that happens that night, so.
AB's that night, too.
Yeah.
And the library board, I think, is that night. It's the busiest.
Sometimes the library board is that night, yeah.
It's a busy night.
So we'll do it this time, and then we can look ahead and see when those conflicts occur.
Yeah, just let me know what you want to post it for, and we'll get that taken care of, and easy enough.
All right. Then looking at the February 23rd meeting, Women's History Month proclamation. We have the 2 annual reports and potentially PC, so we'll work that out. Potential action on the City Council approval of contracts item, and then a work session under other business to discuss the council retreat and the council strategic priorities that came out of that retreat. On March 2nd, we would follow up then on the council strategic priorities. We'd have a review on data on proposed permit fee changes for FY 2027. A public safety code cleanup concerning animals, dog control, and impoundment. And then a final work session on shared mobility devices, the scooters, as a setup for a resolution on changes to that program, so we could go back out to Lyft and, others, Bird, and the market to solicit scooter providers in the city. That would be on March 9th.
So on February 23rd, it looks light-ish right now. So given the comments earlier from Aaron and me about discussing housing expirations ahead of budget, would staff be ready to talk about it February 23rd in that work session?
I'll follow up with staff. I believe we would be able to.
Let's look at either the 23rd or the March, although the March 2nd one looks like it's already joint with Planning Commission and EDA. Why is that one a joint one with Planning Commission and EDA? Actually, now that I'm looking at it.
Let's see.
On March 2nd?
I think something may have been moved around.
Yeah.
I feel like that
Could have
comment's
been
left
because
over.
of scooters, but I don't think so.
No, I think that feels like that was left over
Permit
from.
fees?
I think scooters would be more likely to have CACT in there.
Yeah.
Anyway, so somewhere between 23rd and March 2nd. Be great to talk about kind of housing expirations and potential budget implications, should we need to plan for that before you present the budget.
Okay.
That may have been because of the permit item, but maybe not.
Right. Okay. The March 9th meeting. So we'd be asking for council action to adopt the facilities chapter to the city comprehensive plan. Second reading on the tree canopy zoning code amendment. Adoption of a resolution setting out the council's strategic priorities. Set the name for the Fellows property, AOK 604 South Oak Street. The contracts approval item. First reading on the ordinance on animals, dog control, and impoundment. And then the resolution on scooters that we just mentioned. Kind of one other, so the housing ADUs and expiring covenants, we do need to plug in a discussion, I think a follow-up discussion on Winter Hill as well. So we'll work to get a date on that. In terms of the sequencing, does the council kind of have a view on the sequence of discussing the expiring ADUs and Virginia Village, one before the other?
Feels like expirations first.
I think that's natural. So then I think this March 2nd work session, we ought to have Virginia Village come back for discussion there as well.
Okay.
On the scooters, we don't currently have the CACT in either of the work sessions where we're discussing them. Are they going to be discussing them at their February meeting? Because otherwise, I'm not sure we're going to get their input ahead of in time.
Yeah, so I think that would be the point. So if the council would got briefed on it on February 2nd, you'd kind of get a presentation on it, some recommended changes to the program. Then it would go out to CACT for their review, and then it would come back to you on March 2nd. So it would have to be at that February meeting with the CACT, and then action on the 9th. If we need to build more time in there, we certainly can. It is something the community in the past has had a lot of interest in. But I think what we're envisioning is fairly modest modifications to what the council adopted the last time as its pilot. So I think we're kind of thinking it's sort of an amendment to that policy, not a de novo kind of discussion. But the community might view it differently.
Well, no scooters came, so there's really no feedback from the community.
Was that 2019? It was 2019.
It was a
when we
long
did
time
that,
ago.
right?
COVID, so.
It's pre-COVID, yeah.
I have a question about Gordon Road Triangle. Where is that discussion occurring?
Thank you for bringing that up. So what I'd like to do is present the city council with a charter for a working group on Gordon Road. And we need to get that plugged in with a date. In terms of just a charter discussion, that's not terribly complicated, and we could get that scheduled pretty quickly. So that could conceivably, I think probably what would make the most sense is to have that be on the February 23rd regular meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Can I ask a question about that one? When we had the Gordon Road Triangle conversation, you had Wyatt sort of talked about almost like it wasn't like an ambassador, but it was a like person, right? Who you envisioned kind of being an organizer, driver around Gordon Road. Do you still have like that in mind? And is that sort of concept that you had talked about during that meeting getting incorporated into sort of this charter document?
Yes, I think what I'm envisioning is that this coordinator person would be a member of the planning staff. And their job is kind of the convener and the organizer, but the charter will sort of lay out how this group then will do its work and under what kind of a schedule. That's the idea.
Yeah. No, I just didn't know if that was like coming to us in budget, if it was like a person on planning staff, if you envisioned it as like a part-time position, like is it going to come up not only in the conversation about Gordon Road, but are we seeing something in the budget about it? But it all makes sense timing-wise because we'll be in the midst of all of this, I guess.
So I'm envisioning it not needing an additional staff member. It would be an existing staff member who would be assigned to this. We may have a budget for consulting services. That's still to be determined.
I thought sometime in Q1 we were going to get an update on the east-west secondary bike route.
Yeah, that was supposed to be on February 2nd, if I recall correctly.
Is that on there, or did I? It fell off, I think.
It is supposed to be on there. I'm going to go ahead and write it in. And so that's a lot on February 2nd. We're going to have to kind of work through how we can manage this agenda. The goal was to brief the council on the concepts and then meet with the HOA really quickly after that and try to work with the HOAs on the best options.
Okay. Okay, what do people have? Aaron?
It comes up semi-regularly, but I know you had said that maybe Mr. Kiflay may have been in contact or would be in contact with Mr. Peterson over the modest, maybe revamping of the stormwater credit program. And so just wondering if that's still happening and kind of the status of it.
So the request from from VPAS is to increase the size of the grants that homeowners would be able to get from $1,500 to $3,000. Staff supports that. We don't think we need to based on current utilization, increase the budget for it. And so we would be prepared to come to council and just ask for that approval. And that's basically the extent of the request at this point.
Was there
So-
something about the, like, simplifying or being able to get credits for portions of things, or like that it was overly complicated for what it was? So is it like you could get a higher grant amount and we're just going to like streamline the form in some sort of way too?
So that was an idea that I thought was something that we needed to address, but in talking about it with Jeff Peterson, he didn't think that that was a problem. So I think maybe it's become a simpler issue than I had envisioned it to be.
Okay. Art?
There was an email last Friday from the city attorney about, I think last Friday about something
Closed
that needs
session.
closed session. I don't see anything on here about that.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
It was the closed session Sally suggested
Oh,
we
yeah.
have on authority for org changes.
Yes, this is Sally, joining remotely. I did suggest that we talk about two charter provisions regarding how positions within functions and job titles within the city are determined, and recommended that we have a closed session discussion about the memo that I sent.
Would it work for the council if that were at the end of the February 9th regular meeting or at the end of the February 23rd regular meeting?
– 23rd now has Gordon Road Charter and housing expirations.
That's right.
People have a preference. I mean, the 9th, I guess, is a bit lighter, maybe?
Yeah, we could do it the
We
9th.
set it for the 9th, and then if the 9th gets to be too dense, we could always bump it to the 23rd.
Sally, does that work for you?
It would.
And so prior to the 9th, I'll also lay out kind of my thoughts on some changes that we would make to the budget adoption process in light of these charter provisions that we think will go a long way to meeting the charter's requirements. There are some that we think are kind of strange and archaic, and we would, for those, we'd like to address ultimately through a charter amendment, or at least that's my perspective on it, but that's what some of the things we'll be discussing with that.
Okay. So pencil in for the 9th. Okay, anything else? Okay. I think we're done with schedule then. Any final things before we adjourn? Okay. Good night, all. We're adjourned.
Thank you, council.
Good night. Thank you.